to see, utilities, any gap in the structure, all that kind of stuff.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Councilor Freely.
John, just a quick question, like what's the potential benefit of owning that property and/or potential use of that property by the city of Virginia?
Councilor Freely, but I think I'd need to get inside of it and poke around a little bit to get a full appreciation for what's going on in there. Again, as I had mentioned earlier, the western edge of the property, or the one that's occupied, is really nice, and they actually did get I believe, a VITA partial grant and partial loan for that project to renovate it. So the occupied part of the commercial refrigeration business is really nice. The east side, technically, if the interior's got anything worth saving or doing, you could fix the exterior, remove the asbestos, and fix a couple windows, and you might be good to go. I've seen some buildings in town that are a lot worse. Let's put it that way.
So I think maybe we should direct staff, if it's is amenable to the elected body, staff continue to review this and do some additional investigation, with contact the owner, and then come back with a recommendation moving forward. Does that make sense?
I would just as soon pass on this. I'm not sure if that needs to be done formally.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bearber.
John, is it the address right in there? Isn't that, wouldn't that be First Street North, not South? If it's by commercial refrigeration?
It's First Street South. There's a couple funky address things down there, but it's, the newer part is 105 in the corner there. The white part of the building is actually, it's 105 First Street, but on their placard on the front, it says 101 First Street South.
Huh, because commercial refrigeration is north.
They have several buildings in town.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. I didn't realize they had one in that area. Okay, thank you.
And if I can clarify my suggestion, Council, not for us to look at the potential purpose of purchase of the building or acquisition of it, but maybe contact the owner and give them some information on what that owner's options are, as suggested by Councilor Paulson. So that was the intent to do so, not for us to look at, to accept the conveyance of the property or take ownership of the property, but only to have our staff contact the owner and maybe explore some options that owner might have.
I would add that we don't have a plan for it. They approached us, said, please get rid of this building for us. And we just, I have concerns about just trying to tear that thing down and take that on, because again, it's flush right up to the existing building that's occupied.
Thank you, John. Okay. Britt?
Here, there was another council member had a light on.
Oh, who did?
Thank you. Item number 4 is review the available residential land for development in Virginia, and this is by John Sullivan.
John?
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I was just shifting from one project to the other here. So I see City Engineer Matt Reed's here, so I might bring up his name a couple times. I got him involved in some of this, as you can see, a lot of this. Let's just go back. So as a body, a while back, we said, geez, we've got some property up in Midway, we got some property here, we got some property there. Staff was directed to just kind of figure out, what do we have, what's available, what might it cost to develop, all those kind of fun things. So this is a result of that directive. And as you can see, we did put some time into it and tried to put some numbers into it. Some of these properties, either the city owns or we've been approached to, get involved in a project or whatever. So just to start off, what I did was, we summarized the housing study that we had done recently and talked about the rental housing demand, senior housing demand, new construction market, all that stuff. And basically, to sum up, what the housing study said was we've got a lack of all these different things. So that just kind of sets the context, if you will, for, looking into our available lot inventory. The Malheur site is about an approximately 20-acre site up in Midway. And that's the one that I think I probably had the most fun looking at with Matt, because we trounced around out in the woods, and it was a beautiful day, and I got scared by a deer. But that's a whole nother story. So you don't want to hear that story, no. So anyway, I'll tell you later. So we took a look at that, and it's an incredible piece of property. The city owns it. It's very wooded. It's got some really nice views. It would be really desirable for future development. And when Matt and I were walking out there, we took some GPS locations. We walked through, and we were picturing Moore Drive and extending it and seeing, what would that look like? What does this feel like? One thing we didn't feel that it felt like, I don't want to put words in Matt's mouth, but it didn't feel like a real high-density type of location. It's wooded. The homes around it aren't, like real smacked in, tight, close like that. We felt if somebody was going to want to purchase that, they'd want to, about a 1-acre property. I talked to local realtors and said, what are people looking for? Close to the school. This would be a higher end housing area is what we felt if it was going to be developed. So you can see we phased it out into 3 phases, and we put a price tag on each one of those. As far as extending streets, water and sewer, there's a concept plan in there. There was some time put into this, and thanks again, Matt, for helping me with this. We were looking at phase 1, looking at about 5 lots, and the development of that was about a $1.6 million project because you got to extend water and sewer, and that's kind of the very beginning of it. That's where a pretty good chunk of investment is. Phase 2 would consist of the extension of Moore Drive to extend utilities and roadway to connect to Borgen Road to the phase 1 lots. And the estimated cost for phase 2 is about $2.7 million because you've got some distance involved there. And then phase 3 was replacement of utilities, roadway, and general lot prep along the northern portion of the property. And that would be divided into 20 buildable residential lots. And those lot sizes would range from about a ½ acre in the smallest to about 1.2. And the estimated cost for phase 3 is roughly 3.1 or 3.2 million. If you look at the whole 20-acre development cost, you're at that $305,000 per lot before you even build a home. That's one of the reasons, for the total, for 25 lots, you'd be at $7.6 million just to develop it. These are estimates that were, there was some time put into this. This wasn't just kind of cranked out in a day. I mean, there was a lot of thought put into this based on elevations and whatnot. One of the biggest challenges to developing anything in that Midway area is ledge rock. And we saw lots of it. The area extending on Moore Drive, where you would have the 5 lots, that would be probably, I don't want to put words in your mouth either, Matt, but that would probably be the easiest part of that whole development to continue. I think bringing in fill, not having a basement, go slab on grade, that could be a really nice area to develop with probably higher end homes in there. My personal opinion was that I thought it'd be real neat to have like a gravel road and have it kind of rural looking and everything, but our subdivision requirements make us do street utilities, water, sewer, all that fun stuff. So anyway, it'd really be expensive to develop, and that's probably one of the main reasons that it stopped development back when it did. I know there's some water freezing issues up in Midway in the wintertime, with people that have to run their water at times during the winter to avoid freeze up because of the ledge rock being close to the surface. I also know that the school, the Rock Ridge School, when they did construction there, they had a site budget, and they exceeded their site budget quite a bit because they ran into a lot of ledge rock to get that prepared. Ledge rock is nasty. I mean, just to get through it and put water and sewer through it is extremely difficult and very expensive, and the school district found that out firsthand. So at this point, at least that's the Mallard site. If it's okay, I'm just going to kind of go through some of the other ones. The former Midway School site, we didn't spend as much time or effort on that because that's just more of the same, and it's about the same development cost. You're looking at that $300,000 per lot before you even put a home up, roughly, to develop something. I did spend some time turning the page to the Bridgeview site. We do not own the Bridgeview site. That's in private ownership. It's about a 12.5 acre parcel along Highway 53, near the intersection of Cayuna Drive and Midway Drive. Basically, it lacks currently right now adequate water, sewer, natural gas, but utilities terminate at the city-owned property where the city owns the Midway Motel right there. Electrical lines are located on the eastern portion of the property, so serving it in the future would not be difficult. I did meet with the owner of the land, and I've talked to him and his representatives a couple times now. And there could be a proposal coming to us for that, for a high-density project, but I haven't seen it yet. I have had some discussions. What's held that site vacant to this point has been, they were marketing that towards gas stations and hotels. And one of the reasons gas stations and hotels didn't want to locate on that site is because it's right in and right out. It's a controlled area. And the Bridgeview development people, and I might be telling some of you stuff you've already heard before, but this is, keep in mind, I've only been here 7 months. I'm still leaning on that excuse, but it's really difficult to get any hotel or gas station or convenience store person interested in that because you can't just come in and come out any way you want. It's all controlled. Ever since the new 53 went through in the bridge, MnDOT made a lot of restrictions on there, including stacking, signalization, all those kind of things. So when I talked to the owner of Bridgeview, really the only interest he has from it at this point right now is high-density residential, which really would work because a high-density residential user doesn't necessarily need, all these. I mean, they can adapt to challenges of access. So what would that look like? Potentially, the site could easily hold about 3 to 4 separate multifamily apartment buildings. We would have to take a little bit more look at it with the property owner, but if we do get a proposal, we'd probably take it through the planning commission and bring it to the city council for further discussion, but at this point, I don't have one. I know I'm going through these a little bit quick, but that's that one. That's kind of where we're at there. If you turn the page, the Lackner site is at 16th Street North, and then that is, Mr. Lackner came to the city council and was asking the council to be interested in purchasing that property. That property is in an established neighborhood. It's bordered by the mine property, but it does lack adequate water, sewer, and natural gas. Electrical lines are located on the north portion of it. I talked to Matt about that. We took a look at it, thought the parcel could be divided into 5 lots ranging from about 0.77 acres to 0.282 acres. Cost in developing that is estimated at $148,000 per lot for a total of $740,000. The owner had approached the city to purchase that property, and the city just thought, well, we don't know enough about this, we just need more information. So that's what we're doing here, providing more information. If you turn the page to Fairview Second and Third Edition, those are the established housing lots in Northside, Virginia. We don't have too many of those left. There's only 3 interior and 2 exterior, and one of the exteriors got utilities on it, so there's only one that faces the mine area, and we have that reserved for a person that we recently gave them an extension on that one. And there's 3 interior lots left. The city owns those. The interior ones are $15,000, the exterior are $30,000. And wrapping up, we do have some vacant parcels along 8th Street South, and those were the home to a former gas station. Each lot is 150 by 72. There is city services are located adjacent to the lots. One structure would probably fit on this property, but due to the former use of it, the site must be remediated and cleaned up prior to use. Costs for cleanup at this point are unknown. Does anybody, I know that's a lot, and that was a quick tour, but, roughly, if we do, the general rule of thumb is development of new lots for residential is expensive, especially single family. That's why we're not seeing a lot of new single family housing development here, especially in that range of 200 to 300,000 that the study says we need to have a need. The reason is the development costs preclude selling a home for that when the lot costs more than the house does. So it's very challenging. I think one of the opportunities is for higher density multifamily housing, but that's site specific. It's not the right use for every lot or every area. So that's the challenge. I did present this to the Planning Commission, and they really liked this. That was information they didn't, have and didn't know, so they were glad that the city had asked for that. Their feelings were as well that maybe one of the better opportunities is, potentially Bridgeview area for multifamily. So we're going to wait and see if we get a proposal on that. So at that, I'll turn it back to you for any questions. Thank you.
Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. John, thank you very much. Matt, I really appreciate the time we've been, I know several years ago, Nevada had done a lot of work when it came to properties for purchase and that kind of stuff. So thank you. I've heard my whole life we're landlocked, and technically we're landlocked, but I think that what you're presenting here indicates that there may be creative use for some of that land. When I first read this last week, the one thing that my mental notes went was, where's the $50,000 house that I live in? And that's only because the county re-evaluated it. It used to be 35. But the other thing this tells me is I think it would be interesting for us as a council in the future to look at how do we rehab those old houses, or how do we, and we've already started taking down a lot of the vacant houses, or and this kind of goes back to that corner property. How do we do that? And I know the biggest thing here is always the money. How much is it going to cost to take it down? How much is it going to remediate? How much to rebuild? But I'm very fortunate where I live on 8th Street. I actually have a little more than 2 lots, and that's very uncommon. But I think that at some point in my home is 100 years old. I'm guessing most of the houses in this part of Virginia are 100 plus. I think that's something that we should think about or put into the back of our minds is that I think the only way we're going to be able to draw in new families is going to be to figure out how to take 200-year-old homes, get rid of them, and build a modern home in that same space. I think that also presents an opportunity, and I know the planning and zoning is looking at looking at the zoning and everything. One of the things that we've never been able to do in town is build on a 25-foot lot. Well, the way things are going, you could build on a 25-foot lot with a tiny home, and that would be something that we need to look at. A lot of people are looking towards smaller homes, more efficient homes. So I think, John, this is an excellent first step as we start trying to figure out what the future holds for the city, and how do we attract younger families, new families, that kind of stuff. So thank you both very much for your work on this.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Yes, once again, we echo that. Thank you, John, for that. Councilor Freely.
Yeah, Matt, John, great information and nicely done for providing specifics and details, although projections, which unfortunately sound significantly cost prohibitive. I hate to admit, but that's what it looks like tentatively. One area of interest that I have that wasn't mentioned in the report is that there is going to be properties availed once the school district makes their transition. And there is going to be a brand new elementary school that's going to be built right here in the heart of town. And I think that that's an area that we should start thinking in terms of improving and or looking at how we can create a neighborhood in that area that's going to be conducive to the school and to the families that'll be hopefully wanting to just walk across the street to attend the schools. I don't know how much land. I think they own 40. I know they own parking lots adjacent to my properties, and then there may be other peripheral properties I'm unaware of. But I just want to put that out there that it's in the heart of the city, and it's going to have a brand new green space with the playground and the soccer field and whatever else they're going to put there. But I think it'd be a great place for us to think in terms of legitimate projects that the city could put together to provide potential opportunities for housing in that area for people that could avail themselves to that school. That's one thing I would like to see us look at in addition to what you've already reviewed.
Yeah, thank you, John, for moving forward with this, keeping us apprised of what's going on as time goes by, as information comes forth. We as an elected body have had efforts to try to open up some of those economic development pieces, particularly along the Bridge development site with the state of Minnesota, reopening Cuyuna Drive, but that has been a challenge. We've been to the legislature all the way up to the Commissioner of Public Safety, Commissioner of the Department of Transportation with no avail. We've been there twice with some of our local range delegation as well. So we'll continue to work on that, and I know that you're looking for some innovative ways in which to continue moving forward and trying to find, open up some space available for us. And thanks, Matt, for doing that as well as our engineer of record, Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. John, I really appreciate, and Matt, the work that you guys did. This was one of the requests that I had without my knowledge of the costs, so I really appreciate you digging really deep into this. I would ask that this maybe be a baseline for conversation going forward. I guess my one question is, even with those costs being so high, would there be a potential way that we could put it out there for any type of a developer to come and take a look at? Or do you really feel like it's just too cost prohibitive at this point to even have that conversation?
We could always check to see who's interested. I think just the development cost per lot would preclude any house less than about $750,000 for a developer to make. I haven't done a development analysis. I certainly could do that. I used to do that before I started here, but my gut's telling me that for a developer to make the money they would need and for the holding costs and all that kind of stuff, you'd be looking at very high-end homes. And the housing study said we needed some higher-end homes, but I don't even know if the assessor would value a home in town up there at $750,000 or $1 million. That's kind of, we have one up there off Borgen Road that's for sale right now for about 1.8. That's the highest valued home up in that whole area of Borgen Road. I mean, we could certainly look at it.
And I don't need to waste your time on that. I just guess I wanted to see if you had an answer or a recommendation. But I really appreciate this, and I think we could use this as a tool or a baseline going forward. And even the planning, was it before the planning commission you brought this? Just the fact that they have access to this information, I think is extremely valuable. So I really appreciate you guys doing that. And maybe if in the future, I don't think costs of ledge rock, development is going to ever be inexpensive, but maybe in the future it's something that we could look for, development of. Thank you.
And thank you. I just, one more quick comment to tack on to what Councilor Paulson said. I built my house up on the Borgen Road in 1996, 1997. I had to blast red ledge rock out of there. It cost me a few $1,000s, but it was worth the investment that I made. It's a beautiful piece of property, as these are much more beautiful than what I have where I'm at. So thank you. John, thanks again very much. And as I said, we'll use that as a baseline. Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Okay, anything else on this particular subject? Okay, thank you. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, Britt.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the request from the Airport Authority to review and authorize signature on the letter regarding disadvantaged business enterprise participation at the Evelyn, Virginia Airport.
Okay, thank you. And I think Councilor Johnson and I have some information. Maybe I'll defer to Councilor Johnson. We're at the Airport Authority meeting. There's an issue regarding using the disadvantaged business enterprise participation in this last project at the airport. And because that disadvantaged business was not available, we have to sign off on this letter with the elected body or the body that's oversees. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. When this first came to us, it was of great concern to us that the company had not used it. And after a little bit further investigation by the airport's architect of record, KLJ, I think that's, yeah. They did determine that there's a percentage that needs to be based of the disadvantages businesses for use. And in northern Minnesota, it's very hard to find those businesses, especially in the summer during construction season. In the Twin Cities, not so hard. And so basically what the airport authority is asking is that both cities sign this letter that says, we believe, and this is our recommendation from the committee, or the authority, we believe that the company did do their diligence in trying to find a disadvantaged business. And they were able to find a different one at a smaller percentage. So they did fulfill some of the requirements, but they were unable to, they didn't forget or didn't try, but they were able to use another business that was able to fulfill a portion of that. So this letter basically says that we understand and agree that they did the best they could and we're okay with the percentage used. And that would be, my motion is that we approve this letter to the, whichever entity it is.
Yeah, and it's in order to close out the project as it's been completed already. So this is the last piece in that puzzle. So motion by Councilor Johnson, looking for support.
I'll support.
Support by Councilor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, opposed, motion carries. Britt?
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a request to block the 5th Avenue South for the Mesabi Range Youth for Christ block party.
This would be like the third annual,
I believe so.
after skipping it the last year because of COVID, but we've approved that before. Councilor Beyondich?
So moved.
Councilor Bijan just moves to approve. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 7 is approve request to block the various streets as requested for the Speakeasy Car Show on August 28th, 2021, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
I will move approval of blocking those streets.
Counselor Johnson moves to approve. Is there support? Support by Counselor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 8 is a request to approve the resolution for change order PC 0117 for rink accessories for the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. And we have Brian Silber, our Park and Recreation Director, here to discuss.
Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, council. This is a owner-requested change order that we are doing. It is, just like the title says, for rink accessories. What we are looking at doing is Becker Arena Products is one of our suppliers that we use on an annual basis for many things. In addition, they have some accessories that we have not utilized in the past. That would be a very good thing to add for safety. We are looking at adding a new set of hockey goals. We have one newer set that we brought over from the miners, and we're looking at utilizing that in the second rink, taking the set that we used for games in the second rink, making that a practice set. So we'll have several practice sets of goals in addition to several game goals. The reason we want to do that is we want our game goals to look a lot nicer than the practice goals. We're also, in the main arena, we can utilize the mesh pegs, which allows for the goals to slide off of the stand a lot easier, reducing injuries to the players when they crash into the nets. We're also looking at adding some goal frame dollies. This is good for our staff when they are moving the nets when they are not on the ice. The nets get a little bit heavy when they're not on the ice, so we want to have some dollies to be able to move them so that our staff are not stretching and straining in ways that they should not be. In addition, we have some goal protectors. These do not necessarily protect the goals. They protect the players during practices. They are pads that go on the goals. So in a practice, when a player crashes into the goals, there's some padding there. You cannot use those during a game, but during practices, it greatly reduces injury. In addition, we are looking at upgrading how we flood the rinks by adding some additional hoses and nozzles and a retractable hose reel for the arena. We're also wanting to add in the electric glass lift system, which would attach to a forklift that we are currently getting prices for. This is so that currently our staff has physically been lifting up the glass and setting it down. The glass that we will be using in the Toyota arena is much larger glass, which means it's much heavier. Again, we do not want to put our staff at risk of getting injured in any of these things. And we're also looking at some dashboard storage carts. That way, when we remove the dashboards at the end of the arena for non-ice events, they can go on these carts and we can easily wheel them into the storage room so that they are out of the way and not just sitting in the arena during a non-ice event. And then some of the stuff that we use on a regular basis, we have the opportunity to get that and stock up on it. This would be stuff such as the jet ice. This is what we paint the arena floor white with so that you do not see the color of the cement through the ice before it gets all scarred up. Just makes for a nicer arena and more visually appealing. So the total of all of this is $28,700.60. Like I said, we could get all of this, we could order all of these things at any other time. However, by doing it at this point, since Becker Arena Products is already shipping us stuff, we will end up paying no shipping on any of these items, and adding it to as a change order ends up saving us money in the long run. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to.
Brian,
Yes.
our architect did add things onto this change order, so the hose reels and Zamboni changes, and the rink accessories come to a total of $51,912
Okay.
and 3 cents. So that is the total change orders, $51,912 and 3 cents.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Let's go around the council first. First, Councilor Paulson, Councilor Freely, and then we'll go all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. When you stated, Brian, this was an owner-requested change?
Yes.
Who is the owner and who requested the change?
We are the owner, and our staff actually requested that we look into these things, and
And
so
what staff are you referring to?
Park and Rec staff, the staff of the building.
Okay, so that's a little misleading when you say owner requested, because technically the city is the owner, but this should be, it's staff requested.
Staff requested, and myself as the owner representative requested the pricing for this.
Okay, so, and up to this time, we still do not have a commitment from Rockridge Public School District that they will be naming the Iron Trail Motors Event Center as their home arena. Is that correct?
That is correct. Right now, they are looking at half of their games, both boys and girls, at our facility, and half of their games in Evelyn for this coming year.
So I would proffer that this $28,000 expense should be borne by whomever the home team would be playing hockey in that arena. That's where I'm coming from. And the $28,000 is for a variety of things, which is in our packet. But if you look at the breakdown, there's an electrical package in there from Parsons Town and Country of $12,162.60. Most of these are add-on things except for the hoses and whatever. I'm having a hard time understanding why that fee is that expensive.
Previously, what we have done in flooding the rinks in both of the arenas is the fire department has been very gracious to us and has given us fire hoses that no longer passed inspection that they could not use for fighting fires, but water still flows through them. Unfortunately, those hoses have metal on them, so as you are dragging those over, connecting them together, they freeze to the ice, so we actually have wrapped hand towels around them and duct tape those hand towels. We then have those hoses get heavy, as any fireman can tell you, and then we have to fold those hoses up and empty them. What we're looking at doing with the hose reel is just like many of us have at our house, we used to before we had the hoses that shrunk up, but you would have a physical hose reel that you could wind up your hose. That is what we are looking at adding, and it is electric hose. So what we do is, it would be in the Zamboni room, we grab the hose, drag it all the way across the rink, and start flooding the rink. You then press a button, and that hose reel is electric, which is why Parsons is adding the electric, and we're adding the water to get to that hose. It starts retracting the hose as you are flooding. Now, this is a solid hose, so there's none of that metal that gets stuck to the floor, creating bad spots in the ice. So this will help us to up our game in preparing the ice.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I still feel that I guess it's listed under athletic equipment, that there should be a conversation between the City of Virginia and the Rockridge High School for that.
And
those
this would not
dollars.
just be used by Rockridge, this would be used by anybody who is playing hockey in the building.
And then I would bring those parties to the table, which would include Vaha, I would assume, youth hockey. Is that correct?
Okay. Also decreases our liability as a city with the building because we are providing those safety aspects.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Freely.
So we are going to be utilizing contingency monies that are still available to us to be able to
Correct.
cover the cost of that, and that would leave us still with additional contingency monies available for other potential costs that are unforeseen?
That is correct. What I just handed out on the page that I handed you is the change order log. You do see all the change orders that are listed on there and the total amount that is remaining for contingency. Also, remember, it is our plan to use that whatever contingency remains for FF&E. So if you flip the page over, you do see our current FF&E log also.
So in other words, we have the funds necessary and additional funds necessary for contingencies that may come forward.
Yes.
And I guess when I'm looking at all of the things that you have listed are essentially safety items with regard to those kids that'll be playing in and around this equipment, as well as for the workers, having carts and dollies and so on that are afforded to them so that they're not hefting and lifting and using their backs as much as they would in the past.
Correct.
So from the maintenance standpoint and the safety standpoint, I think these are legitimate expenditures, apparently. And I am a little, to say the least, disappointed to hear that we may not have full scheduling of our varsity programs at the ITMEC this year, but I'm certainly anticipating that will be the case in the near future following the next hockey season, I hope. But, our facility, and, I guess I look at it too, we are the owners of the city of Virginia, but you're the staff that has to get together, consult with one another, determine what you think is necessary within the building to keep kids safe, to keep your workers safe, and to have the equipment necessary. And then the self-contained aspect where you don't have to rely on other entities like the fire department or whoever else to come in and assist to get things accomplished. So in my mind, given the financial solvency that we have still within our contingency and the requests being primarily maintenance and safety features, I would definitely be favorable towards moving forward with the requests and with the completion of the project with the arena.
Thank you, Councilor Philippe. Councilor Baraboo?
Ryan, a couple questions for you. Where's the hockey team going to do their practicing? They're not going to split squads when they do their practicing. That would be counterproductive for a hockey team. So are they going to do their practicing on the new arena mostly with the scheduling I saw? I thought that's the way.
That would be a question to be directing to your school board members and your school administration. The current schedule is that of what we have worked out so far is one of the high school teams, whether it is boys or girls, will be utilizing the main arena Monday through Friday afternoons for their practices. I believe the current schedule, and this is subject to change, again, this is something that you would need to be asking the school, the boys will start the season practicing at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. Midway through the season, they will move to the Hippodrome, and the girls will come over to the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. Now, there are both boys and girls games scheduled early on in the season and late in the season at the arena. The television crews have informed the school district that they will only broadcast games from the Iron Trail Motors Event Center because it is set up much better for a television experience than the Hippodrome is.
Where did the girls practice last year?
The girls last year had some practices in Hoyt Lakes and some practices in the Hippodrome.
So that's going to increase the rental, because the school's going to still pay rental for the ice time and stuff. We have a contract already, I believe. correct?
We're currently working on a contract. Their contract ended at the end of the last school year.
Okay, so we're gonna have income coming in, and I'm guessing it's not gonna be a lot less because of the expense of the new arena. It's gonna be
Correct.
somewhere around the same amount of dollars, so that's not gonna disappear. And you have figure skating program that's gonna put
Yes.
money back in, and I believe that will probably increase with the new arenas.
And we're even adding a new, or bringing back an old figure skating program. We're bringing back synchronized skating.
Okay, so that's more dollars coming back into the facility to operate. I'm with Gary on this one. The safety of our employees you get one workman's comp outage for a long time and stuff, that costs a lot of money, increases our work comp dollars, and that can get quite expensive. You lose an employee, you gotta find somebody to replace them that may not have experience, may have experience. So I'm willing to spend the $51,000 out of the contingency that we have left just for those reasons. And you're gonna pick up a lot more tournaments. So you need a way to be more efficient. The hoses and stuff are when you first lay down the ice, I'm assuming, until you get to a Zamboni thickness on the ice. That's why you use the hoses to build the ice up.
To build up the inch of ice that is skated on, yes.
Yeah, so,
And also after events, we do weekly floodings of the rink. So these are not items that are used one time out of the year.
No, it's
They're
all
utilized
year.
throughout the entire season, at least on a weekly basis. The goalie frame, or the goal frames, will greatly assist staff in moving frames from the storage room out to the rink, because we don't want to be utilizing our game day nets for practices. And
understand.
we obviously don't want to use our practice nets for game days.
no, that's understandable. So the girls will be protected also with those new changes when they practice there.
For practices, any player that would be on there, whether it is a squirt player up to one of our experienced adults that is skating during the daytime, would have those pads on the nets.
Okay, so the squirts, it's allowable to use that padding then in games and stuff?
They cannot use the padding on the goals during a game. It would just be during practice.
Youth can't use it during games either?
No.
Okay, but for practice they can, so they don't get hurt?
The easiest way to visualize this is, a football goalpost.
Yeah, where they
Here,
have-
I come
where
from
they-
football country. They have that big pad around it. That's essentially what this is, wrapping around the legs of the goalpost for practices only.
Okay, I believe this is an expense that we
Yeah.
need to incur for safety and for helping our staff out if they're looking at this for their work process over there. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Counselor Bear. Well, before we go to our finance director, we'll go to Counselor Johnson. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Brian. Thank you for taking a different look at the safety in that building. I know we've said it here before, but getting it right the first time is really important. I think it also, that comes down to the behind-the-scenes stuff. I think that this also demonstrates, as the other counselor said, a commitment to our employees. When we did our touring 3 years ago now of the other buildings, some of these things that you were bringing forward were concerns of the employees in those. Where do we store the glass? Where do we store the boards? How do we move stuff? And part of me wonders, it's not a contingency item now, because back when we used to ask questions about what do we do if, how do we get if, we were told it's not time yet to ask those questions. And so finding the right time to ask the questions and get the answers has been challenging at best during this process. So that you're bringing these to us now, in my mind, makes sense, because when we tried to ask these questions earlier, we were told to wait. And so we waited, and somehow we missed the deadline for putting that in. And we are working with a budget. I'm going to be very supportive of it. I think it does save us on shipping. Obviously, the shipping's huge and getting more expensive every day. I also think that it really demonstrates the foreknowledge, your foresight to try to guess. And with that, what other future expenditures that will go from wants to needs before the end of the project in the next couple months? Do you foresee any other large expenditures?
Forklift and snow removal
Okay.
supplies. As you drive by the facility these days, you're going to notice there are a lot of sidewalks and a big, beautiful plaza right out front. This time of year, very low maintenance, but just wait till that January snowstorm and we're removing that snow. So we're between Public Works, Parks and Rec, City Administration, we're looking at several different options of what we can do. But the big big equipment expense that I'm looking at is adding a forklift. One of the items in here that you'll see is the electric glass lifter and the forklift attachment. That is literally the suction cups that go on the glass, the forklift goes, and the forklift does all the lifting, moving it over to the cart, rather than our staff getting and lifting. Previously, the glass that our staff would remove was 4-foot high glass. We're now going to 8 to 10 foot high glass. Obviously, we do not want our staff to be straining themselves and pulling their back out or anything. We also don't want them to be dropping that glass and shattering that glass. So we're looking at the safest ways possible in working with our staff. This is what they would like to see us add, and this is the industry standard for switching an arena over from an ice event to a non-ice event, especially since at the end of our main arena, the rounded part of the arena, all those boards come out. And those boards are not light.
And I appreciate that the culture of the city has changed over the last several years too, to be listening closer to staff and what they deem as needs and wants. And I think that's important that as things are changing, that's happening in a lot of our departments. So I appreciate you being willing to come to us after listening to them. So I think this is a good idea. And having healthy, safe, happy staff to me is priceless. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Sherry, did you have a comment?
I actually had a question. So what is the balance on your contingency fund? $481,000?
Yes, so we still have a healthy contingency left that can cover these things.
Does that answer your question, Sherry?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. So we've had comments. We'll go to Councilor Beyondich and then back to Councilor Paulson. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. So we are talking a lot about the safety of our employees.
Correct.
Why was this not brought forward earlier and put into the budget?
These are FF&E items. So as we're going through the FF&E stuff, the reason I'm doing it as a change order is if we do it purchasing FF&E, then it is more expensive for us because we end up paying the shipping. Becker Arena Products is who we would purchase all of these things from. So doing it as a change order saves the city money by adding it to the construction project, because they will just put all these things on the truck as they deliver them here in the next few weeks.
The other question I have is, how many more change orders do we anticipate, and what are the costs? What I'm afraid of is at our design meeting, I was told many times, we have lots of money, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. And as we got closer to the end of the project, now we're cutting things because guess what? We don't have the money. So that is my question, when change orders come forward, how much left do we have to purchase? Are we going to have enough money? And this is great, it's all for safety of people. But my concern is with change orders that continue to come forward,
We are within 2 weeks of substantial completion, month of the grand opening. All of our, or I would say 99.9% of our documents have gone through. We should not be seeing any more change orders. In fact, we haven't had a change order since April. So Carl Sanderson has done a phenomenal job of managing and mitigating the change orders on this project, and they should be applauded.
and I appreciate everything you're doing for this, but once again, I'll say, the change orders concern me. I would have rather seen everything put into that first budget so we knew what we were dealing with, but when change orders come up, I'm always concerned about the end result of a project. Where are we?
And on the sheet that I handed out, you can see detailed out the budget for the contingency fund, and as we've all discussed in here, whatever's left in contingency, we're planning to utilize for FF&E. So I have all that documented on the FF&E log of those funds coming over to assist with FF&E.
Can you assure me that we're going to be okay at the end of this project? That we will not be over?
Unless we go hog wild buying things, and you know, as a member of the design team, we are watching our budget and doing our due diligence to make sure that we are not going over.
So you are relatively sure that we will not be going over?
I'd love to have more money.
No, I'm not saying more money. I'm saying we need to stick with what we have.
Exactly, and that's what we are working on doing, and doing everything that we can to minimize expenses so that we don't have a budget shortfall or overspend and have to rob Peter to pay Paul.
That's what I was getting to. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor Beyondich. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree that safety is paramount, and, and that's why you're coming forward with the staff recommendations. I truly understand that. I guess the problem I have is a financial one. Under the Kraus-Anderson's estimate of the change order, the requested items equal $28,700. But they always list this under HVAC package, and I'm not sure why they do that, and it disturbs me because it's not broken out, Brian. When they so there's an HVAC package, Bob Hekimovich Mechanical Contractors for $8,900.
That would be running the water line to the hose reel.
Okay, I appreciate that right now, but what I'm concerned about is we get these submissions, and the HVAC package is not broken out and the electrical package is not broken out, so I can understand to justify why we're paying nearly, the whole project is $51,000, the equipment's $28,000, that's $21,000 for a contractor to install. That's half of what this is. So that's concerning to me that we weren't given that information and a breakdown of what are they doing? What are they installing? So I would like that provided, if you could provide that.
Okay.
Is that something Kraus-Anderson can, we're
Absolutely.
nearing the completion
Yes.
of the project, but again, this is why it's frustrating for me when these, and I understand why you're putting it forward as a change order to save on the shipping costs. That makes complete sense to me. But when it's in there as an HVAC package, none of that is necessarily heating or cooling. It's installing something. So I want to understand, what is that and why is it $8,900 to install what?
We could have that detailed out a little bit more for you.
I totally appreciate that. Thank you. And I just wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. Okay, I'd like to make a couple guys so we get more lights on. Counselor Philippe?
Well, I'd like to make a motion for us to go ahead and approve the request for the resolution for change order PCO 117 for the rink accessories, given the information we've been provided and the recommendation of staff.
Thank you. Motion by Councilor Freely to approve the resolution for change order PCO 117 for rink accessories for the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. Is there support?
All support, Mayor.
Support by Councilor Baraboo. Further discussion, Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. Councilor Beyondich, I do feel your frustration, but I will point out again that when we first started this process and we were asking questions, we got told to wait, and I remember us all having a huge challenge that we had a budget that we were working with, and all of a sudden, a lot of things got shifted over to FF&E that we all thought were part of construction. And I remember us having some very good discussions in this room with the architect and Kraus Anderson about trying to understand why some things that to all of us were part of the building, and yet they kept calling them FF&E, and what it was for them, it was exactly what's happening now. It's so their budget would look good, and we'd have to figure it out at the end. And now we're figuring it out on the end because there is a contingency because of that. So I truly feel your frustration, and I hope that when we start the next major building project, that those, the contractor, if we have a contractor at risk and the architects, they understand that we're all experts in this now, and we are gonna ask those questions, and we're gonna want those answers then, and we're not gonna be patient and wait till the end when we're having this discussion in 3 years about how come there's not enough outlets, or why the generating outlets are only every other, whatever it is. So I think this is an excellent learning opportunity for us, and I think it'll help us be much more efficient when we work on our next project. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. A lot has been said about this. It's been moved and supported. There's a lot of things, the comments that I'd like to make in answer to all these things. But the bottom line is, it's not just about safety, it's about efficiency, it's about professionalism, it's providing a professional work environment. This is what this arena is all about. This is a process that's followed, maybe we want it changed, but all over these arenas. And I could tell you from personal experience on 5 major projects since when I worked my previous job, this is what happens. We make these requests. Not the construction manager at risk, not the contractor, not the engineer. We made those requests. They came from our staff, so they're bringing forward to us. I think we could question some of the different modules on how that works, but in this particular instance, this particular change order is necessary. So that being said, I don't want to say anything further, so it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. And the next item on the agenda is the 2022 budget.
Yeah, we want to take a quick break? This is going to be a long discussion, I think, to some degree. So let's take 5 minutes. Thank you. Hello? Okay, everybody, let's reconvene, please. Thank you.
Thank you. We're back to item number 9, which is review the 2022 budget.
Like talk radio, you're on, Sherry.
Good morning, council. I just handed out an updated budget. We did have a personnel meeting, I think it was Friday, was it Thursday or Friday of last week, regarding the event planner and the wage set there. So I anticipated approval of that, and I included it in the expense on the second page, under the, I'm sorry, third page, under the enterprise special fund, the IT Iron Trail Motors Event Center. So that's included, that's raised it up. Me and Britt did get together and managed to chew away some of the expenses. So we have an updated transfer from reserves to general fund. So I'll start out with the first page. Is there any questions right off the bat?
I just curious, I just have one question, or actually, it's one comment. Well, it's a question. So I don't know if we had a motion and to approve this or not, but I would like to answer this question. Now, all the revenues that's generated from the Iron Trail Event Center, are we having a special fund so those revenues go directly into that for the administration, operation, and maintenance of that facility?
That is correct.
Thank you. That's all I have to
okay.
add. You don't have to look through it, but I want to make sure that you clarify that. Thank you. Please continue. Does any councilor have any questions to this point so far? Thank you, Sherry.
And if you don't mind, I don't mind if you guys interrupt me and have a question there while it's fresh in your mind. I would rather be able to answer it right away. To start off with the general fund levy, we proposed, and I say we, I don't have a mouse in my pocket. It was me and Britt. We proposed a 3% increase, which is roughly $147,633 from last year. Special levy is based on our market value of 2020. So we can levy $69,366. This goes directly to Arvida for downtown and other improvements, economic improvements. Special levy for P&H tax abatement, and Councilor Baraboo is well aware of this. We had a discussion yesterday a little bit on it. That's $161,703. Good news is that the sales tax revenue has been much more than what we budgeted, so we do not have to levy this year for next year's payment. We have enough in reserves. The new street and alley 2021 bond, this is for next year's payment, $161,000. In an overall debt service levy of $9,415. Sorry about that.
One question, Sherry.
Sure.
On the P&H tax abatement, how many years do we have left on that?
Oh, you would ask me that. It was a 20-year, and I want to say we have 16, but that's a guess, okay? And I will double check.
Approximately 16 years left. All right, thank you. 16.
Yeah.
16.
So let me double check, okay? I could be a little more than that, but I will.
Be less than that.
I mean, sorry, a little less than that.
Right, might be less than that.
But I will send that out to you folks by email.
Would you please? Thank you.
Sure.
Sherry, could that, the date of that be put on the P&H abatement? Could that?
You know, that's a good idea.
Parentheses and
Yes,
it'd always
I'll
be
do
there.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is other revenues that we received in, and the LGA, this is the projection, certified proposed levy. I like how they say certified proposed levy. It is increased a little over 2% from last year, up to 6,049,573. We'll take it. Taconite.
Can I ask one question? Local government, you may want to comment about that?
Sure.
This is the largest allocation of local government aid anywhere. We get the highest amount, and there's a variety of reasons for that. And there's a lot of pressure from the suburban legislatures through our Orange Range delegation, through some of the bipartisan support, our lobbyists, those kind of things. They're working hard to try to maintain that. I did talk to Tom Bach last Wednesday about that up at his fundraising event, and he said that the pressure is more and more and more, but the Iron Range delegation is strong, and the people who accept local government aid have come to a collaborative, so he doesn't anticipate that they're going to mess with this next year. So just to give you a heads up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
One thing, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the Rams organization will be supporting no changes and stuff in the local government aids and stuff too. We'll be sending, when the next session comes out, we'll be sending out stuff from all the 7 counties on this to all the legislative body at the state. So we'll be supporting this 100%, not to change.
Okay, thank you. Sherry?
And continuing on with our taconite aid, I did talk to Bob Wagstrom earlier this summer, and actually, it's based on a 3-year period of production tax, and it's increased about 58,000. So you're going to see a bump in the actual taconite municipal aid up to 1.1 million, and then the other purple highlighted one is the mining effects tax. That went up about $2,000, but it all adds up. So back up to the police and fire aid. I just left some of these numbers the same as this year to be conservative because I don't have a final set number yet. So they could be a little less than what we would be getting, but I'd rather be more conservative than too high. And as you see, the SRO, I left that same because I haven't received any feedback on whether we're going to increase that or how that's going with the school district. Then you move on down to transfer in. This is the Amariso lease that we have with the Huntington Bank, and Public Utilities is assisting. And Britt, if you want to give a little history on that, we will be getting $60,000 from them. Administrative overhead fee that we charge, which goes back to the general fund for enterprise accounting, $480. Now this one here, transfer in from reserves to general fund, $348,755. This, we did get the 5.4 million in. I'd like to pay back ourselves because we have a personal internal loan of $3 million that goes back into reserves. We have to pay the public utilities, and then actually the general fund, we owe about $1 million, but all I'm asking to take is 348 and leave the rest in investments. That would balance the general fund.
Okay, Councilor Beyondich has a question.
Thank you. Sherry, miscellaneous donation sales of $69,775. What is that?
Jump in anytime, Britt. We have sales, in the past, we've sold public works sales, trucks, vehicles, equipment, office equipment, miscellaneous donations. We get donations in sometimes for, well, like the library, but we dedicated that to the library, but it does fit in with the general fund.
So it's the same number every year?
I just went with last year's. Yeah, it's roughly conservative.
Okay,
Moving on down to special revenue.
I'm sorry, Councilor Paulson, I apologize.
That's okay. Thank you so much, Mayor. Sherry, I don't know if this is in our revenue side or in special revenue side. But in previous budgets, where has the hospital revenue from the payments that Essentia was making to the city, where did that used to, which revenue stream did that used to fall in?
Mayor,
Please go ahead.
that would fall under the enterprise funds.
It was an enterprise, okay.
I did not put it in there.
Right, and so my question is, it's a big question. This is what we're projecting, you want us to approve this budget going forward. I really think that we need to have a conversation about what is happening with our hospital and the payment or lack thereof coming into the city as revenue, because that's something that's always been in our budget, although it was based on a bond payment to pay down the bond. Now the bond is paid to zero, but there is still, that's still it's an asset in our books, but it's being, maybe you could explain that, how the depreciation does it work against us?
At this point, it does work against us. We have not received any type of revenue in from the hospital for about a year and a half now.
And I think that we need to, as an elected body, we need, I don't know if Brian, if our city attorney has had any conversation, but this has gone on way too long, and if we're going through to approve this budget, I think we really need to understand what is going on with the hospital.
So thank you. Maybe this might be, it's tangent, it's parallel to the budget itself. Brian, I know we have an agreement in place, we're looking to purchase, but there's an issue with the helipad. Could you give a little synopsis on how we could can we work that in, as Councilor Paulson has suggested, as we all would like to see some type of revenue stream until this is sold? What is the legal ramifications of that, and what are our options off the top of your head?
Thank you, Mayor. And so that is, it's no secret, we've kind of run into a hurdle in the sale, that helipad, the bond financing, and the conditions that must be met to release that. We're exploring, both the city and Essentia are exploring options that may allow us to complete the closing. The most recent, there's been an appraisal that's been commissioned. I'm not sure if it's been completed. I haven't seen the results, but results of that will influence the direction we go. But in the meantime, this may warrant some additional conversations to see, in the event that the closing isn't going to happen or these hurdles are too high to jump, what the next steps are. It may make some sense to start planning that now.
And I appreciate it. I did not mean to go on a tangent in the budget, but I do think and God bless you, John, several times. I think it's important that we address this to try to understand how we're going to implement that in our budget. When do we need to approve a budget by? What is the?
Good question. We need to get the preliminary levy in, which is basically, you can set the levy, but you can't go any higher after September 30th. You can go lower. So I'd like the proposed budget and pretty much set by September 30th and then chew away at it.
Okay, so maybe just recommending going forward that we could have some more discussion or get some solidified answers from Essentia, and then communicate those with Sherry for budget entry.
And in addition to that, is to find out where we're at on the helipad thing, right? So that's the big obstacle right now, right? Thank you. Councilor Baraboo, and then Councilor Friedlieb after that.
Brian, am I correct on this? The appraisal is only on the helipad and the elevator, correct? It's not on the whole facility, is it?
No, the Mayor and Councilor Baraboo, the appraisal is required to touch everything that's developed portions of that property because of some language that was placed into the bond financing for that helipad, and the bond financing was also used tangentially to improve the elevator, but the language defined the encumbered property as the entire developed property of the hospital, which is an avenue that we've explored already and kind of came to a dead end on.
Those bonds are already paid off, the rest of them, so why can the state hold us hostage to that? That's the question I have. Why are we going after the state legally to get rid of that auspices in that? Because That's crazy, when all the bonds have been paid off on that hospital now.
Can I?
Regardless of outstanding, and we can talk after, and I'll be brief. Regardless of whether or not the bonds continue to be outstanding, there's a requirement that either there be full market value paid for the property, or that we hold the property for 125% of the useful life of the helipad and elevator. So that's what we're up against, and that portion is built into the bonding contracts that were signed when the bonds were issued.
Thank you, Brian. Counselor Freely?
Yeah, I don't know if it's time to, we're on a tangent here as opposed to the
We're
budget.
fine, we're fine, that's part of the
Well,
budget.
just a quick refresher on where we're at, like with the hospital, it was like, we were gonna sell them the land on which it sits, is my understanding, but we still own the actual property, correct? The buildings itself.
We do right now until we close on the sale, and the closing on the sale has been obstructed by the helipad issue through the state of Minnesota.
But even if we sell, we're selling the land, or we're selling the land with the hospital and everything included?
Everything.
And so we came to the conclusion at some point previously that the value that we had in the hospital, which was 30 million-ish, so to speak, appraised value of anywhere between 14 and 30 million. And we determined that we agreed with or acquiesced to Essentia's claim that they had put in multiple improvements along the way to be able to continue to conduct business there. And those improvements were in excess of $26 million. So they essentially were telling us, we've already bought the property, and so we would like to have the land that it sits on and move on from there. And that's still where we're at.
Yes.
Okay.
And that could change if this helipad issue doesn't get resolved. That agreement goes away, and we'll have to revisit that, as Councilor Paulson indicated, as we move forward through the budget process. There should be some parallel discussions about where we're at with the hospital and how we can reopen up negotiations, and we look for staff and our legal counsel to facilitate that for us.
And over the course of that year and a half, then we've lost all of the revenue that we had produced from that property while having them as a tenant, so to speak, within our building, correct? So
Yes.
that's what she's referring to, and so that's a loss of significant revenue that will continue unless there's other progress in a different direction, which that doesn't appear to be the case. Once they iron out this helipad thing, they own it, it's done. We will never see that in our bottom line and our budget again.
Right. Once the final documents are signed, if we can get past the helipad, free and clear, nothing with our budget, they own it, and we have no other responsibility.
The depreciation
Thank you.
disappears.
So, Councilor Bearable?
The depreciation disappears once we turn it over to them. We don't have it anymore, the $1 million a year, whatever it is now.
Right. Thank you. Okay, Sherry?
All right.
I'm sorry, Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Sherry, according to my calculations, $60,000 a month times 20 months is $1.2 million. That's the revenue we have not generated in the last 20 months because of this. I know this is on the staff's radar, but I think that the public thinks we've forgotten about it. And in order to make sure that they know we are, I'm going to make a motion that this be added under unfinished business on our regular council agendas, and we review it every 2 weeks until it's resolved. So that is my motion, to make sure it's added under unfinished business until the legal documentation is done and we no longer are responsible.
Okay, a motion by Councilor Johnson. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Councilor Paulson. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. Motion carries. Sherry?
Continuing on, the next is the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. We're projecting a $1 million revenue. And if you go to the very last page, actually, I'd like you folks to pull that one. So as we go through the enterprise and special revenue, you can see what I'm talking about. Expenses are 1.7 million, and that includes the part-timers, everybody. Labor and benefits, 1.2 million. 431, almost 432 thousand operating. And so as you can tell, there's a little bit of a deficit, about 300,000. I'm hoping that it breaks even, but if we have to, we are gonna have to look at subsidizing that. I'm just gonna be brutally honest. Tennis for all,
Well, let's go back to that because we're kind of glossing over that a little bit here. So that's why the concern of the council is these salary and benefit packages, these new positions that we're adding, is eating away at a revenue stream. And you've just set that as an example of why that is. And the goal and objective is, and I can understand the first year or so, that you're going to have to make some adjustments. Eventually, it's going to have to be revenue neutral. But the goal and objective was not to have that facility be burdened by the general fund and the general budget. So, thank you. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to reflect on where Isaac Sports Group said we would be in the pro forma. I believe it was all the way forecasted 5, maybe 8 years in terms of subsidization. So maybe we could get some clarification on those numbers, because I actually think it was over $1 million the first year. I haven't seen that document for quite a while. But could we go through and review that maybe at some point to try to understand what those, I mean, if our sales tax numbers are doing good, I mean, that's going to really help us. But maybe that's something we could go over and then compare that to what Isaac Sports Group had, I guess, forecasted in the pro forma. So I didn't mean to segue, but I appreciate if we could do that. Thank you.
I think that's prudent. So we have, so the bonds are, the sales tax isn't for the general, even if it's excess of sales tax revenue, it's only to pay off the bonds. We can't take any additional money and put that into the maintenance operation administration of the new Iron Trail Event Center. So that has nothing to do with our revenue streams with respect to that. Is that correct?
that is correct. After the 20 years, I believe that you can use it for M&O, maintenance and operation, but mainly
Well,
maintenance.
that would have to be renewed
If there's
down
any
the
residue
line. Okay, thank you.
left
Capital
over.
improvements. Capital improvements.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Johnson?
Sherry, would you be able to also, with that, can we look at, I think we need to work on percentages based on actual numbers. Can we look at what the revenue versus the subsidy was for the old building and those programs? I think it would be important to compare those percentages because we were subsidizing the old building 100%. There was very little breaking even. So I think that's also something to, thank you.
I actually, that's what I was going to say next.
Run it
is
by us.
that
Let's go.
the recreation, the employee benefits and the labor part last year was in the recreation department. All they did was move those people to the Iron Trail Motors. So $975,000 that you see in this labor and benefit was sitting in the general fund last year.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's a good point. So, but as we move forward over time, we don't anticipate that we're going to have to subsidize this facility through the general fund market. So, we'll make those adjustments moving forward and monitoring that as Councilor Johnson requested. And I think that was to the point of Councilor Paulson as well. So, thank you. Anybody else? Councilor Beyondich?
I just have a question. What other entities in town are we subsidizing?
Well, as we move on down here.
We're moving on down the pike here, so thank you.
Tennis for All is one of them. We are subsidizing that, and we have since they started, beginning of time. And you're going to see that we do have some capital improvements budgeted for next year of $33,000, and then you have operating expense. So, yeah, you're going to be subsidizing roughly around $40,000. And then the next one is our ambulance fund. We will be subsidizing that at $330,000. The revenue stream hasn't met our expectations. So I think this one definitely needs to be looked at every quarter, since we did put on single roles, 12 single roles, or added extra staff.
Okay, and thank you for that. I'm sorry, you want to continue?
Thank you. As we talk about this, do the department heads, are they involved in developing this budget?
Yes.
They have input on how they are laid out?
Yes, in fact, I have the workbook here, and I give them a budget worksheet, preferably in May or June, no later than May or June, and they get back to me with their projected revenue, with their projected expenses, and then I go by actual year-to-date. I live in 3 years. I live in the past, the present, and the future. So I did check, and this is not to get, I don't want to think I'm segregating out the ambulance, but I did check with Transmedic, and last year, or for this year, 21, is right at 3 million. And they feel that next year is going to be at 3 million. And we've got it budgeted at 3.5, so I'm hoping we can bring in what we're expecting those extra runs and extra staff to do.
Okay, so.
Chief Allen is
I
in the,
think, yes, I'm on your frequency. I know that, by saying this is a deficit, we're looking at the projections and the revenue stream that the department is having with respect to the influx of employees and benefits and how we provide the ambulance service. So I think it's prudent at this juncture that we was talking about this, and it's supposed to be an $830,000 deficit. I think you're asking, if you are, to bring Chief Lewis up and have him give us a little explanation?
if he could, and
Yeah.
I have a list of questions here, and I was actually hoping that Brian Silber would be around.
Are you prepared to come forward, Chief? Okay, thank you. Counselor Counselor Beyondich?
Thank you. Help me understand this.
I brought my budgets along with me today since I saw there was going to be budgets discussed today. So thank you for the question. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to explain. I'm going to push back a little bit on the excess versus the revenues and expenditures. In 2020, the City of Virginia audit report, and you can pull the City of Virginia audit report, reported that the ambulance had $374,832 in excess of deficiencies being under, revenues being over. But our revenues were above our 2020 projections by $374,000. I'll also point you to the Virginia Ambulance Fund trend. Back in 2015, that was 1.1 million underwater. That has steadily risen, and in 2020, according to the City of Virginia audit report, the Virginia Fire Ambulance Fund was at $873,000. So to say that the ambulance is under, I will say that coming out of this last year, out of COVID, the runs were down. That's why the billables are down at 3 million. I will also point you to the MDH grants that we received of several $100,000, $225,000 in one, $70,000 in another. Those grants that we received helped push up the overall revenues that were brought in 2020. So you're seeing an offset of MDH money. So it's not quite factual to say that the ambulance is losing money. The audit report shows that it's not. We have never fully hired all of the people that we need to perform at the $3.5 to $3.7 million. That's still a work in process. We keep hiring, we keep losing, we keep hiring. It's literally 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So that's continuing. The ambulance fund is in the black. It has been in the black for some time now, and I project that it will continue to be in the black if we can hire the personnel that we have requested and they continue to run the transfers as requested. Those projections were right the first time, and you hired 6 people based on those projections, and now you just hired another 6 people. We have to get to that place where all of those people are bringing in those transfers. Again, transfers are 50% of our revenue. They're only 33% of our calls. We have to keep running the transfers to be financially solvent. I'll admit that. So does that answer your question on revenue? This is from the audit report. This isn't my numbers. You can check my numbers. I have the worksheets.
Okay, if we just pause for one moment. Sherry?
I do want to disagree here tactfully. In 2019, we had to transfer from the general fund $342,000 into the ambulance. We were dinged on our bond rating by, not by S&P, because of the ambulance deficit and because of the golf course. In 2020, we did not charge you for those 2 ambulances, so this year you're going to see a drop in your revenue. You bought 2 new ambulances that weren't budgeted. So you're going to see a drop in the 2021 audit when it comes through.
So again, those are taking individual years, and that is true. The City of Virginia audit report in 2019 did show a 312 deficit for that year standalone. But if you look at the trend, again, starting back in 2015 when we had a $1.1 million deficit in the ambulance fund, that then rose in 2016 to $141,687. That was a fund balance as of December 31st. That fund balance in 2017 was $84,290, a slight drop. In 2018, that fund, after we hired all of the single roles, the fund balance on December 31st in 2018 was $802,000. In 2019, we dropped down. We dropped that $312,282. Again, City of Virginia audit report. In 2019, that fund balance dropped to $498,790. In December 31st of 2020, it rose back up again to $873,622. So we do go up, we go down. Some years are better than others. There's offset. You cannot take an individual year as a standalone. After COVID, we're going to get smacked big time because of the transports. Our billables are going to go down. The MDH revenue, though, from Minnesota Department of Health, that $225,000 grant that I applied for and got, the other $70,000 grant that I applied for and got, that is helping to offset the cost of one of those ambulances. We bought 2 ambulances in 1 year. Those 2 ambulances, one was for 2020, one was for 2021. So they were spread out. One of them's already paid for. One of them should already come out of the capital budget.
Paid for.
It has not. Our auditor would not allow us to put it in the 2020 budget because it was not taken possession of until 2021.
So it's going to be rolled forward. So you're going to see the fund balance drop. Again, you can't take a standalone year and say, you know, you have to look at the entire balance. Again, I'll go back. 2015, we were 1.1 million in the hole, in the red, and we are now at 873,000 in the black. This is from the auditor's report. This isn't my numbers. You all have the audit report. Any other questions?
Yeah, Councilor Bionich?
Thank you. And I think this becomes a larger conversation. We talked about, or you brought up the COVID money to help offset that. I would also like, and I think I requested it earlier on, was when we are asked to approve spending money, I would like to know how much of that is covered by grant dollars and how much, I mean, as our chief, do you know how many grants that you have written and received dollars for? And is that reflected on this budget at all?
Chief?
Just in rough estimates, since I've arrived here, I've written and received over 1.5 million in grants, both in fire and EMS. A little bit of a spoiler here, but you're going to have another 327,000 coming in within the next week or two. That just hasn't been formally signed off by the commissioner, but it's coming. It's already been approved by the committee. So that will bring it up to just over 1.5 million. I agree. It would be really nice to see an offset of those. I know in the last budget that came out, you know, the USAR funding that we were able to bill and collect. I'd love to see that in that budget too, that was reflected. I'm sure it'll get there eventually by the end of the year. But I think it is very important to show the added value. And I'll agree with Sherry on one thing, is that the sustainability of fire and EMS services and the way that they're being provided to the entire region here, that model is not sustainable long-term. We're billing $16 a call and 22 cents a mile to the county. We've got to do something different. I've said it in meetings with, I've been really consistent about this. I've said this to the council, but we cannot continue to provide a service, a quality service at the level that we are and not collect more revenue streams. We have to have county buy-in. We have to have neighboring communities. We have to have consolidation. If we don't, we are going to, I mean, look at my budget. I only control, 19% of my actual budget. Last year, 81% of my budget was taken up in personnel and benefits costs. I don't have a lot of discretion over a lot of my budget. Those are negotiated contracts, and yes, we need all of those people, and believe me, they deserve every penny they get. But
So
I'm just saying, big picture, we
Yeah,
we
and
do
I-
have to take a serious look.
And I think that begs for a larger discussion with respect to how we seek collaboratives with respect to the county. We've had that discussion before that. We'll work on that. That's for us to discuss at another time through your staff and through administration. But I do have a question for Sherry. This is a good point with respect to the grants, as you pointed out, Councilor Beyondich. It's nice to be, would be nice to have a breakdown in the budget. I know we used to have a budget book, but we have the working portion, and I'd like to see a breakdown, whether it's on a separate standalone document that shows whatever grants received, whether it's by the police department, public works, or fire EMS, that we know, the additional revenue streams come in, and instead of bunching it into all one thing, unless you have that broken down already, Sherry.
Yeah, it's in this book here, and so there would be a line item under ambulance, if it was an ambulance grant, under 270. So it has a special, ambulance has a special revenue fund, and it starts with 270.
But we don't have that book.
It's rather lengthy, and you are more than welcome to come in and look at it, or ask me to send you the file. I can send you all the files.
Yeah, and I think I think what Councilor Beyondich and I would like to ask is that as well, that we just get something from you showing what the grant dollars were collected, by not just fire EMS and the ambulance service itself, but other departments, so we have kind of an idea of where the grants are. I mean, that's all we're asking for.
Sure, but this is a proposed budget for next year, so I can't go by what we received as grants in the past.
No, I understand that, but it's
So I just
meaningful
clarify.
to have it before, and as you move through the 2022 budget, and as grants come in 2022, you can parcel that out for us.
Yes, we can. We do the monthly budget reports. You should have got one, I think, on Friday.
Correct.
And in there should have their grants received, any revenue received for each department.
Okay, so on an annual basis, maybe we could get a synopsis of that to some
That's where
degree.
your audit report comes in.
That is correct, and that's why I read through the audit report before the budget today and looked at the revenue streams and what the audit report says as opposed to what the proposed 2022 budget is, and that's why we're asking these questions today. So we appreciate that. Please continue, Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I guess that's why I asked the question earlier on what do we subsidize? What else are we putting money out for? Because for me, personally, infrastructure, public safety, number 2 items in our priority list. So if we're subsidizing other areas, we certainly need our fire and our EMS. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councilor Paulson and any other questions with respect to this issue. And then if it's all right with the elected body, and Britt, we do have representatives from the league here. Maybe we could suspend the rest of the budget because it's going to take a while and get that presentation moving forward. Would that be acceptable? Okay, very good. Thank you. So, thank you, Chief. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I appreciate you coming up and kind of going over those numbers. I think that information is valuable to have in terms of the grant or the COVID dollars, like where did those go? Because I know some of those COVID dollars, I think it went for an ambulance from what I can recall. But I guess for me, I'd like to dig down deeper into this department, if at all possible. I don't know if we can do a special meeting. And for me, this rings a little bit more personal because of the lack of the apparatus working on on the fire truck during the fire that just occurred within my building. And if we're not delivering as a community the requests of our department heads for public safety, I just personally experienced something completely devastating. And I think the worksheet, Sherry, that you just discussed about department heads being able to come forward, I've never seen a worksheet. I don't know if that's prior practice of counselors seeing or not seeing worksheets. I know when I was a VRMC employee in the department I worked in, I filled those out, so I know what they are. I don't know who got to see that worksheet, but I really, at this point, I need to see and understand what our public safety, what our fire department is asking for. Because when it comes, and I mean, I'm sure you work it through and try to massage it and, iron it out, and I get all that. And I may be speaking a little passionately because of what I just experienced. But if I, as a city councilor, don't understand what the department heads are asking for, and our Park and Rec Director, Brian Silver, is very vocal. He'll come in and he'll say, "Oh, you just watch, I'm gonna ask for the sun, the moon, the stars." And then he says, "I'm asking, here's what it is, sun, moon, and stars." But I really want to give the opportunity, because as Councilor Beyondich said, our public safety is one of our #1 priorities, I think, that our elected body needs to focus on. And the fact that the apparatus or the ladder truck was just taken out of service the day prior to the fire without us having a backup ladder truck or a backup plan. I don't know how many millions of dollars a ladder truck costs or an apparatus costs or how to service it. I don't know that. But I would really appreciate the time, if this council could take, to have a discussion specifically on this department, what our goals are, and how much that's going to cost. Because you lose a life, you lose a building, you have insurance. You lose a life, you've lost that life. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. We'll do one more comment from the council, well, two more now, and then we'll go to this presentation at 11 o'clock. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I need clarification on two things. I don't know if it's from Chief or from Sherry. Can you define the difference between revenue and the actual money in the bank? When we talk about revenue, are we talking about the money that comes into the city, or are we talking about what we build? How is that different? Because I know there can be differences in that.
Sherry, could you please give us an clarification on that for us?
The proposed revenue is what we hope to receive in services and billing these services and collecting them.
So in the past, the revenue, that's what we enter in as, I'm going on the accounting of accrual. When we send out a bill, it's for $100, but that doesn't mean we're going to get $100 from that bill.
Correct.
So when we talk about the revenue from last year, are we talking about the actual money that came in? Okay, that helps that. And then Chief, can you clarify what you keep saying we're $800,000 in the black? What does that mean? Are we talking about we have an account that was empty by $1 million, or I'm not understanding, you keep going back to that it's grown by $2 million, but what is it, and specifically, what does that mean for the budget moving forward?
Chief Lewis.
Thank you. Happy to answer that question, Councilor Johnson. So if you have your 2020 audit report from the auditors, you will note, I'm just looking through my notes here.
Can you refer to a page?
It would be under it's a statement of all of the funds, and I don't have the audit book in front of me. Look for the fund balances as of December 31st. There's a one sheet in there. I'm trying to remember what number that is. If it's page 46 or what it is. I can send you that. And so it says fund balances as of December 31st, and it lists those fund balances. The Virginia Ambulance Fund is listed in those years that it's listed. At the end of each of those years, there's an amount listed. So each of those years, I have put into a trend and a spreadsheet and shown that. So the City of Virginia audit report states that the Virginia Fire Ambulance Fund balance at the end of 2020 was $873,000. $873,622.
So is that money in a bank account then? I'm trying to understand what that means.
That means that's the fund balance as of December 31st.
Or can you clarify? I guess I don't, if there's $800,000 sitting in a bank account, then what does that mean for everything else? And maybe this is maybe the question I'm answering needs to be answered in the meeting Counselor Paulson's talking about, because I'm thinking if there's $800,000 sitting somewhere and it's $1 million, the numbers just aren't fitting together in my head, and I hear you and Sherry speaking two different languages, and I think we need to have it brought to a council language so that we can understand why there's a discrepancy between what you're seeing and what Sherry's seeing, and you're one department and she's the entire, all of them, and how that fits. So I agree with Councilor Paulson and would like to set an explanation meeting as well. So I'll reserve my
I think the
answer.
auditor might be the best person to answer that, since they're the one that actually put the reports together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson, and we'll have staff, and we'll take a look at that, try to schedule a meeting moving forward. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Councilor Johnson. One more, and then we'll go to the presentation by the league. Councilor Baraboo.
Yeah, I've been around long enough for, some of you counselors haven't been around as long as I have, but we did have individual department heads come in with their proposed budgets, their capital expenses, and have a meeting with every single department. And I don't know if it was before your time, Sherry, or not. We used to have that and go through it with each department within the city of Virginia. Then the finance director would put together what you put together.
No, that
here.
was during my time, but then, if I
And we
may,
just,
Mayor.
and we took it away. You know, that, we did do it, though. We did do it. And we questioned
We
at
did.
that time, broken down from what they put together. And a lot of this information you counselors are asking for was in that stuff in the past. So, you know, I don't know whether I want to go back to that, because it's very cumbersome, because you got to have meeting after meeting after meeting on those. But it was beneficial in some ways, especially in the capital equipment end of it.
And I think as a former finance chair, budget chair before that, we had that, but this is the first, meeting with respect to talking about the 2022 budget. There's a ways to go before we get to the end. And during that period of time between now and the time we have to approve the budget, we can bring our department heads in forward and ask those questions. And that's why we have Chief Lewis is here. That's why the police chief would likely be here, conducting interviews today for patrol officers. So yes, we can bring them back in. Remember, this is just the kickoff meeting for the budget. Okay? So that being said, let's suspend one more, and then we got to go to this meeting. One more, Councilor
Absolutely.
Piondik.
Would a motion be made at this point to set up meetings so we can look at past what has been done and see what they're bringing forward for us to go through? I like that idea that Councilor Baraboo said that they used to have those meetings. I would love to see that.
Well, we can formally make a motion, but to bring staff in. This is Mike Mayor. This is a kickoff budget meeting. We're going to have this until the end of probably the first part of December, where we have to approve this budget, or maybe a little bit before. And during that period of time, we can bring the department heads in to give us a little overall perspective on what they're asking for in the budget, with relation, not in relation to the personnel costs, because they can't control that. We do, but it's the capital equipment purchases, as alluded to by Councilor Paulson, with respect to the ladder truck, which we didn't approve for on several occasions. So you go ahead and make that motion.
I would make a motion that we set a meeting to meet with department heads on their budget and what they are requiring.
We just starting to say let's set a special meeting for a budget discussion?
That is perfect.
Perfect, thank you.
So
you.
the motion is to bring, during one of our budget sessions, staff moving forward to present their information. Is that correct? That's the correct motion. Is there support for that?
All support for discussion.
Support by Councilor Paulson for discussion. Real quickly, further discussion, Councilor Paulson.
Real quickly, would this be something that would be added to unfinished business, so it wouldn't, as we go, it's always just like Councilor Johnson just did the hospital under unfinished business? Would that be a housekeeping item to place it in that way? in that fashion so that if there is any unfinished business, it could be discussed, or department heads, if they can't make it to that one budget meeting, that it would be just reoccurring until all of the questions were asked and answered.
Sure, I think that's a good point. I think that's the goal and objective.
So would you be okay with amending it to that way?
Absolutely, absolutely. If we can tie it into a meeting as unfinished business, yes, I would amend that motion.
And I would support that.
Okay, moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Councilor John says aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Sherry, appreciate your patience here. And we'll suspend the rest of the budget discussions so that we can do our presenter at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Eric Simonson from Flaherty and Hood and the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities with a 2021 city update.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. And actually, I'm going to probably give the bulk of the update.
Yes.
Is now working with our shop. Very pleased that we can be here with you today here to discuss some of the work of the Coalition of Greater Minnesota. So what I'll have for you is a very high level update. If you want to dig more deeply into
Thank you.
So again, my name is Bradley Peterson. I work for the firm Flaherty. We do the legislative advocacy. Very good to be back. We work primarily on economic development, transportation. What Eric distributed is kind of a very high, a very wide blow of what we were proposing, housing. So, as I was preparing for the summer after the legislative session, most of that, as you know, and as you guys remote, hybrid,
All right. Oh, gosh. On time and in full. And so, we hit the legislature and the governor's office hard with that message through a number of means. In-person meetings with legislators, and in-person I mean Zoom. Editorial that went out statewide, penned by the organization's leadership, that was carried in over 10 outlets, print outlets on a statewide basis. A social media campaign that included probably a 5 to 8 minute video featuring a number of our members, Mayor Cuffey included, on the importance of local government aid to the communities in terms of what it meant in terms of combating the pandemic, and then
that LGA would be the foundation for economic recovery after the pandemic. And all of these things and the participation of our cities and folks like Mayor Cuffey was tremendously appreciated and tremendously impactful. As we know, as the session went forward, the two things happened. One, the state budget position became a lot rosier than I think a lot of folks had expected even 5, 6, 8 months previous to that in February of this year. And we were then showing a surplus. Additionally, we were beginning to see the influx and impact of lots of federal investment coming into the states and into local governments to also bolster budgets and to combat the pandemic. And so we hit it hard early on in terms of LGA. And we did a lot. It turns out that things ended up being rosier than we were anticipating. But I certainly by no means regret anything that we did during that time period, because our strategy was basically to leave nothing to chance, because we just did not know. And so I think that was time well spent and efforts well invested. And so once we got kind of past that issue, really the rest of it for the session was making sure that the legislature did no harm. That the extent to which there was going to be other federal money that flowed through the state that was discretionary on the state's part, that got distributed out to Greater Minnesota in a fair and equitable manner, just as we did with the CARES Act money last summer, last June, when we worked, a year ago June, when we worked on that. We also worked to get grants into the child care area. We worked on housing issues. We worked on broadband, a whole number of things that are in the packet here. One of the items that I'll talk a little bit more in depth is some of what we did around the environment. One of the emerging issues for water and wastewater is the issue of per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, these PFAS chemicals, the so-called forever chemicals. If you think of firefighting foam and Teflon pans and anything that is waterproof, contains these chemicals, many of them produced by 3M. And it's been a big issue, actually, not far from where I live in the East Metro. And so what we're seeing is a greater interest both at the federal level and at the state level in terms of regulating these chemicals. But what form that takes, obviously, is very important because they can get into your waste stream through no fault of yours. You didn't put them there, and they are very, very, very hard to remove and control for. And so these are chemicals that cause health concerns and need to be taken seriously. But the legislature, and many of them there, I think well-meaning as they were, kind of overdid it. And we're proposing bills that would have put strict liability onto cities and wastewater treatment plants that emitted any of these chemicals, of which there's innumerable varieties and variations. And so we took a different approach. We worked with the legislature and the League of Cities specifically to push for a stakeholder group process that would work on identifying how do you keep these chemicals out of the waste stream and out of the water in the first place before they get into your wastewater treatment plant, before they impact your drinking water. And so we were able to get about $600,000 from the legislature to stand up an effort to begin to study and work on those issues. And we're able to forestall some of the regulation that would have been a little bit more one-size-fits-all and potentially unfairly, I think, detrimental to cities that would have had to pay for the cleanup of a problem that you guys didn't create. So we spent a lot of time on that, and I think that's an issue that you're going to see here for the next several years, both as the state and federal government, as I said, take continued interest in trying to deal with them. The last thing that I want to spend some time on is the bonding bill. So in October of last year, 2020, all throughout last year, we've been pushing for a large bonding bill to make investments in projects statewide, both through the grant programs at the PFA, Indeed, things like wastewater treatment, the Greater Minnesota Business Development Public Infrastructure Grant Program, the MnDOT's local road program, things like that. And then, of course, there's lots of local projects that end up in those, and we do look to see if they are well balanced between Greater Minnesota and the Metro. Finally, after lots of badgering, the legislature in October did pass a significant bonding bill. Over $1 billion, lots of investment in water and wastewater infrastructure, lots of investment in economic development, and then a lot of those good local projects that need to get done. This year, there was some discussion about a smaller bonding bill, again, focused largely on core infrastructure. And what we saw was the House came forward, they held lots of hearings, and came forward with a bonding bill that was $1 billion or more. And it was significantly weighted towards addressing needs in the metro area, especially related to rebuilding after the civil unrest in Minneapolis and St. Paul last summer, and to address inequities in communities in the metro, which is necessary and needs to be done. The problem, however, was that it was so drastically unbalanced and essentially left the needs of greater Minnesota out entirely, that we put up a pretty big stink and fired off a couple of nasty letters and had a number of meetings with legislators saying that that type of approach in bonding is not going to be acceptable, it's not going to fly, you need to be balanced in a statewide perspective. So for instance, we all know that water and water infrastructure is a key concern of ours. We've been spending a lot of time on that. The House bill only put forward $15 million for the Public Facilities Authority. We were asking for 100, and the needs there are even greater. And so no bonding bill passed at that time. There is some discussion that there may be a bonding bill during a special session here in September, as the legislature deals with some of the unfinished business of the last budget in terms of identifying what they are calling essential employees to give bonuses to. They set aside $250 million for that purpose. They're supposed to come back in September and finalize that. So there's an opportunity for a bonding bill here in a special session. I wouldn't put any money on that, not even a very, very small amount. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's the right atmosphere. However, next year there should be a hefty discussion about a bonding bill, and I think there will be. And so that's where, again, we're going to be pressing our priorities. Lots of money for water and water infrastructure, child care facilities, housing, local roads and bridges, and then the Greater Minnesota Business Development Public Infrastructure Program that helps pay for the public infrastructure related to business development and expansion. I think we are in fairly good position to make a good case there. We have an excellent champion in the state Senate in terms of Senator Bach and his position as bonding chair now, as part of the deal that he made with the Senate Republicans to become an independent. And so I think there will be an interesting discussion and that there will be a lot of back and forth there. The other thing that I think will happen next session is a return to a discussion around local government aid. Even before the pandemic, there was the rumblings and beginning of a discussion of it might be time to look at and reevaluate the formula. There are a number of cities that are in the legislature's face every now and again saying, it doesn't work for us, we need this, we need more. Yeah, we know we've got a lot of this, but we've got this other problem. And so I think they're responding to that. At our conference in Alexandria that we just held 2 weeks ago, we had 3 of the 4 tax committee chairs there, and they all said that they would be interested in having that discussion. But they want it to be driven by, led by, the cities and the city groups. And so we're starting to work with the League of Minnesota Cities and the Metro Cities organization on trying to put together a framework on how does that discussion really happen. The other thing that makes it an opportune time to have a discussion around local government aid is the fact that because of the continued strength of collections of state revenue and the status of the state budget, and because of all of the federal money that is helping to kind of prop everything up, the legislature, even though it's not a budget year next year, is going to be spending a lot of money. They're going to have a lot of money to spend on any number of things. And it was suggested by the House tax chair, Representative Marquardt, that LGA could certainly be one of them. And that helps as you're trying to develop a new formula to have more money into the system to meet the needs of varying constituencies. So I anticipate here before the session into the fall and the winter that we'll be engaged in that discussion. We'll be reaching out to all of you and the staff at our cities and elected officials to get input and insight on what are the things that you think really need to be addressed from a local government aid perspective. I think when we've mentioned this to other cities, there's sometimes been a little bit of apprehension. They're like, whoa, wait a second. It kind of works okay for us, and maybe we don't want to open this box. I think we're trying to get ahead of it because the box is going to be opened whether we want it to or not. And so we're trying to be really proactive in terms of shaping up what are the needs of our cities and how can we best, through a formula, meet those needs. And so I think that's going to be a pretty significant discussion. Otherwise, redistricting is coming up. I think we'll know in February with greater certainty what those lines will look like. Again, as has been our history, It'll likely go to the courts to figure out, even though it is technically the legislature's job. They're just not going to have the time or ability to do it, I don't think. And so that court process has actually started in terms of beginning to draw the lines and doing all of that. So look for updates on that. I think February 15th is when they have to have it done, so that legislators know where they're running, and you all can do the work that you need to do to set up elections. And then there's the election, of course. And during that time, our organization spends a lot of time educating legislators on what Greater Minnesota needs are. Why do we need LGA, and why does it work the way that it does? Why is the water and wastewater programs through the Public Facilities Authority so important to us? What are the critical needs in terms of building a workforce in Greater Minnesota? Childcare, and the fact that it looks different in Greater Minnesota than it does in Metro. All of those questions are things that we try to answer for prospective legislators. So after they all get on the ballot in August, we'll send out a candidate packet that has all kinds of information to them as well. So that's the role that we play in elections. We don't support individual candidates, we don't endorse candidates, but we do play an education role in any way that we can. And so with that, I think that's really all that I have. I don't know, Eric, if there's anything I've missed or neglected. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments from the group.
Sure, I have one question, and then we'll go around my focus, and thank you for coming up and speaking, give us an update. It's important. You play a very important role in representing Greater Minnesota. We get a big bang for our buck, as far as your representation goes. My issue is about local government aid, speaking to the other legislators, not only our local legislators, our lobbyists down the cities and others, and who's introduced me to other legislators about local government and the grumblings that you had alluded to about where we're going to do, and maybe there's time to change the formula. For the city of Virginia, as you alluded to just a little bit, we get a lion's share of local government in the amount of over $6 million for 2021, So, I mean, it's a lot of money, more than most NECs get. And so when the formula discussions come to play, that we're going to be watching that very closely, and we're going to be asking you to take a look at that as well, and bring it to bear all our representatives, so we don't, that doesn't erode from our ability to run our city. So thank you for that. So we'll move around the room. First, we'll go to Councilor Paulson, and then around the horn there. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for coming and giving us the update. I really appreciate what, takes a lot of time to drive here, so we appreciate that, you guys coming up. One question that I have, and I was reading your timeline of the recent advocacy, and right away, 22 and beyond caught my eye, and this reformulating issue. The question that I have is, while you're facilitating these conversations, whether it's with the committee chairs or whomever it might be, would it be a potential possibility to bring some of those discussions to our new event and convention center that the city of Virginia could actually host, so that these participants would maybe have a better understanding of what we do in fact deal with in our small community here?
Sure. And that's actually a very good question and a very good thought. One of the things that we did in 2012 in 2012, basically, in the lead up to the last formula reform discussion, is that we went around the state and held community discussions on local government aid and the importance of local government aid. And sometimes those involved legislators, and sometimes they didn't. But I do think that there are certainly going to be a lot of opportunities to do that. I think both on an individual city basis or regionally. And so certainly if you guys were interested in hosting something, we would absolutely be thrilled to help you pull that together and try to get the right folks for the discussion there. I think that's an excellent idea.
I think I'm going to speak for all of us. We would be honored to, very much so. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We'll make you an offer you can't refuse.
No, I think it's an excellent idea. We would be happy to help with that.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. Nice to see you again so soon.
Yeah, thanks.
The conference was amazing and very helpful. I brought this up a couple weeks ago here, but also for you, also talking about that dark store theory and how detrimental that is to the tax base of small communities, rural communities that are the center of folks coming in from all over utilize those stores. So the other comment I wanted to make is you talked about childcare facilities, which is great. But then the other part of that is finding the funding to staff them. You know, I ran a child care center for several years. My biggest problem was paying people for what they're worth. And I know you're well aware of that, but just always having that, when having that conversation with legislatures, make sure, if you would, they understand that we can have a perfect facility.
Right.
But when our, especially in rural Minnesota, there's minimums, there's, you know, $3 and I don't know what the current, probably $4 an hour times 3 kids is a lot of money, but it's needed because of the requirements of the state with their ratios and that. So that would be something that I would ask for our communities, is that when you're having those discussions about the facilities, because that has happened here. We got grants to build some facilities and now they're looking for staff. There's just not the ability to staff because quite honestly, you can go any corporation and make, you know, as you drove into town, I'm sure you saw the signs advertising for upwards of $15 an hour, and that's a big challenge, and that affects, even as a foster parent, my ability to take a foster child is hindered because I don't have the ability to put that child in childcare the next day so I can go to work. So it's a really big picture, and I appreciate that it has become one of your focuses as an organization. And I truly thank you for that and for our community and all the other communities. And thank you both for coming up today.
Absolutely. And if I could just add one thing to the childcare discussion. Certainly my mention of facilities was not to say that that's the only piece that we're engaged in. We worked to get money into each one of the initiative foundations to work on childcare challenges in their areas. This is the second year that we've been able to get them money, and so the Northland Foundation will have some dollars to help work on the child care issue in their area. There are a number of conversations, obviously, as well about the affordability piece of it, in terms of, you know, the child care assistance program and the subsidies from the state that we are also engaged in. But you're right that workforce component and the ability to kind of match all of that cost probably does not get as much attention as it really needs, and that's where those conversations are. You know, our staff is certainly engaged with them. We haven't probably come up with kind of what the silver bullet is necessarily. and this issue, as you know, they're just really, it's such a multifaceted problem.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilor Freelieb and then over to Councilor Bearable. Councilor Freelieb.
Yeah, Brad, I just want to thank you and Eric for coming to Virginia today, and always nice to have you up here. And also for the comprehensive report on all the actions that you've been involved in to benefit our city and all of us in our community. And I also like the educational piece that you mentioned too, that's for potential candidates as well as elected officials to have some information that's valuable to them as they move into this endeavor. So thank you for coming up here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Freelieb. Councilor Bearable.
I've got some questions for you, Brian. The broadband issue that you've worked on, and I know there's more dollars coming, but the allocation looks like it's going to be through not hardline, but through Wi-Fi, and that's a huge issue for rural Minnesota because there's not a great enough service for Wi-Fi. So I hope you'll continue to work on that. Rams has been, I'm president of Rams this year. It's been very instrumental in pushing, and Steve Georgie is on the broadband board, and we can push that. And we've been talking about this, that isn't an answer for the rural communities, and they need it just as badly. We found that out through COVID, because all these school districts were down, and half the kids couldn't get onto a computer to do their work. So, you know, there's some more money coming for solid state stuff, but, you know, for the fiber and stuff, but Wi-Fi, unless you put more towers in, it isn't going to work.
Yeah, and if I could just respond, I completely agree with you, and we've had that argument with the Office of Broadband and folks at the legislature quite a bit, and it continues. You are absolutely right. You know, this broadband issue has been one of the most frustrating that I've ever worked on in terms of, you know, you've got the many and the loud and the articulate voices in the telecom community themselves, who certainly have an interest in pushing certain types of technology so that they can serve as many people as cheaply as possible. But that doesn't necessarily meet the needs of our communities, as you noted. And so I think that that's an ongoing discussion in terms of making sure two things. One, that there is an emphasis or at least a view towards what are the specific needs of that community and can we get the right technology solution there? And then two, one of the things that we've struggled with is that a lot of our cities in the coalition have, I'll call adequate, but that's very loose and in quote sort of term, level of service as from the state's perspective, right? You all know in many cases it is not adequate, but as you look at from the state's perspective, that's what they think based on the goals that they've set. And so a lot of these dollars actually are going to the unserved folks who have just about nothing by way of internet service. And the problem there is you're spending a lot of money to service large swaths of territory with few people and few of the core business or civic or educational or healthcare institutions that really need, in order to function, world-beating internet. And so that's another thing that I think going forward, especially as there's this influx of money, that the state needs to look at.
Rams instituted started a big study on what the amount of, we're supposed to have 25 megabytes, most of us, even in Virginia, I only got 13 on my system, and I should have had at least a minimum of 25. That's all over the state.
Right.
And there's more and more studies going on for that, and pushing on that, and you need to push for that. It should go to 100, not 25, to get a good speed.
Absolutely.
Okay, sulfide standards.
I'm sorry?
Sulfide standards.
Yes.
You've been working on that, I see.
Yep.
Now, we see just from a natural standpoint that the rivers out in the western part of Minnesota have more sulfide in it than, or they call it sulfide. It's actually sulfate than we do up here because we have iron in our rivers up here. And now they've added 30 more lakes and stuff to this. That they have to treat it with the only way the MPC wants, through a reverse osmosis, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. We've got a pilot study going here in Virginia with chemicals that we think is going to work with less expense, but we don't know that yet. And this will devastate all the small communities and businesses that would have to, if they don't change the standard to a reasonable amount and move it up. Because they used to add sulfate to the old wild rice plantations in western Minnesota to make them grow faster, and that's true. It makes plant life grow faster. That's a fact. So where you have sanctuaries for wildlife, the plant life grows faster. And that's scientifically a fact. I've testified on this stuff a number of times, but they don't seem to listen to us up here in northern Minnesota. And this has to do with, ties right into the water treatment increases that all these communities that are old need upgrades to. So
right.
If you need help from the RAMS organization, please let us know, and we'll work with the 7 counties up here to help out with your organization.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I just last week had the opportunity to meet the new executive director of RAMS and made her acquaintance, and I'm hoping to get to know her a little bit better. And we committed to try to get together and compare notes and that sort of thing. And so yeah, I appreciate that, because we are working on, as you noted, it is ends up being a statewide issue. You guys end up being sort of the target for it, but we've dealt with the city of Foley and cities in southeast Minnesota and northwest Minnesota that have largely the same issue as you've noted, and so that it is certainly much broader than just northeast Minnesota.
Hey, thank you. I just have one more comment I'd like to make. I just want to say thank you for all the work that you do for us with respect to I'll just say to the MPCA issues that you've worked very hard to help us facilitate and gravitate through that, and it's an ongoing effort on your part, and that environmental fund really is again, it's a really cheap investment for us, and we get a big bang for our buck in that regard. So I thank you for that as well. Does any other counselor have a question or comment for Mr. Peterson or Mr. Simonson? Anything from Mr. Simonson or Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and kind of let Bradley kind of guide the discussion, but hopefully as we go forward, we'll be seeing more and more of each other and continue to work on issues together, and I'm looking forward to it. As a recovering legislator, I think I have something to offer this organization, so I look forward to that and appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Well, I say your reputation precedes you, and it was a good hire. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for coming, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Simonson, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Have a safe trip. Okay, we'll go back to where we left off on the budget. Sherry, thank you.
Well, I just want to make one little note. On your second page, under miscellaneous, it says dues and subscriptions, $26,000. That's where some of that goes to help pay for this coalition membership, along with the Greater Minnesota Cities.
Sure.
So it's budgeted.
Sure.
Okay, I did want to say that Wendy's going to be back. She's got a balance sheet, and we're going to try to clarify some of this stuff with the ambulance, but Mayor, if you want me to move on, we'll go on with the next one.
Well, I think if we just, we're going to have other budget presentations with respect to the fire ambulance. We're going to have the department heads come to those. So I think if you could hold those in advance or hand those out to us, so we'll have that for our next budget meeting, that would be helpful. Okay, thank you. And we can move on to the next item on the budget, if that's okay with the elected body. Okay, thank you. Let's move on.
Okay. Going down to the enterprise funds, Washington Manor increased a little bit. Realize their fiscal year starts March 1st, so there's a little overlapping. But they've been pretty steady and healthy. Solid waste, I left it the same as last year, this year, 2021. The golf course is a little bit of an increase. On the very last page, it still is running in a deficit of $163,600.
And if I may interpret on that, golf course revenue stream, the auditor did separate out what the
About $25,000 in
what the
depreciation.
depreciation fee was, so thank you.
So it's still over $100,000 in the deficit. The restaurant has a marginal deficit of about $5,000. The lease amount doesn't quite cover the utilities. So
Okay.
that's probably something we'll have to look at. Sewer revenue fund is healthy, and then we get down to the clinic lease, and this money is pretty much making a little more to meet the bond payments. But once again, the lease agreement that we have with the clinic expires in 2023, so just heads up, Brian and Britt, we're going to have to look at that because the bond goes further than 2023.
So just to clarify, we have a capital lease with the clinic that expires in 2023, where our bond payment goes beyond that.
Correct.
Thank
Because
you.
we refinanced.
Thank you.
Oops.
Councilor Johnson?
Thank you. So with that coming up, that means there'll need to be a renewal with, is it with Essentia that leases that? When we do that renewal, could we make sure there's language in that when the bond is paid, if they're still leasing, that will equate to a monthly rental payment? Can we make sure that as we renegotiate, that future planning is in there? Because I'm guessing right now it's not. That's just a shot in the dark, though. But I'd really like to make sure that we're not doing the hospital 20 months rent-free whenever this is done as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Overall, we're hoping to end the year 2022 with a surplus of $296,000. If we go to the second page, this is going to be more the general fund breakdown of expenses. And this is by departments. First part is general government, city council, publications and ordinances, the mayor, city administration office, which includes Britt, 50% of my wages, and Chris. We have elections in there. Next year, we do have elections. City clerk budget, city finance department, which includes the accounting staff and 50% of my wages. City attorney, this includes Chris and professional fees and contracted fees. The assessor department is only the retirees insurance in there. Data processing, that is for our software system. Help me out here, Britt, there's a few other.
Yeah, our IT services, our website, our internet service, it's all those things combined.
City,
Copier rental.
yeah. City Hall building, we do need to upgrade our HVAC system, and that is roughly $100,000. Police department, public safety, we have lease vehicles, squads, radios under there. They split that with the fire department. You'll see a little bit drop down further. I can give you a breakdown of the $20,000 capital if you are interested. And then parking monitor, the parking monitor pretty much is a break even. We have enough fines, permits that break even on that. Sure.
When you see parking lot monitor, you see operating budget of $7,431. The labor benefits for that is $48,977 for the parking lot monitor. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. That's a part-time parking monitor along with prorated benefits, health insurance, dental.
So why is that higher than, say, for example, the mayor on labor benefits?
The mayor has, it has to do with your benefits. You are not doing the para and the,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
I should have known that. Thank you.
Okay. And then we have fire department. We did cut back the fire department a lot in the capital to the bare essentials of 12,000. There is lease, the radios in there. That lease grant goes for probably another 3 years, I want to say, with motor oil. And then emergency management, animal control, Mesabi Humane Society, you entered into agreement with them. We pay them $40,800. And then there's retiree insurance in there. Then dropping down to public works where we have streets and ice and snow removal, trucks and equipment. We have leases in there. We are going to need another plow truck. We have budgeted $45,000. We need this plow truck for doing the alleys and some of the parking lots. So our other one is, it really should go to recycling. It's falling apart. Street lighting, this is through Amariso Huntington Bank. We have a lease there, and it will be offsetted by $60,000 from public utilities. Traffic signals, public works garage. There is lifts in there for $59,500. These lifts are way overdue, and it's another safety back injury. So we budgeted that in there. Maintenance at the shop shows you the pretty much retiree insurance. Benefits and labor, same with Public Works office. Economic Development Planning and Permitting Department. This is a new department, and actually, we haven't really received any permitting fees to offset this department's expenses, but it does have a bulk of engineering personnel in there that used to be part of the general fund. So I anticipate as we move further on down the road here, right, John? We'll have some revenue to offset that. Culture and recreation, senior citizens, youth center, music, city band, 10,000 and 5,000 for the orchestra. Greenhouse renovations, I put that in the park budget of $10,000. That is a nonstop renovating program there. Recreation department mainly is going to be retirees insurance and some small operating expense, because I said the bulk of the labor and benefits is sitting in the Iron Trail Motors Event Convention Center budget. And then we have library, and we are budgeting over 3 years a replacement for carpeting over there, roughly $33,000 a year. And then we hit the miscellaneous section here, which is pretty self-explanatory.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, Counselor Paulson.
Thank you. Sherry, under that miscellaneous on the teen center improvements, is that something that they had requested that is needed to be done, or are you just maybe putting that in there in case?
No, I think about, I want to say 3 years ago now, that they came with a list of, they needed a new hot water heater, I believe, in there, and a few other things. So it was a huge list, and we've been budgeting so much a year trying to.
And we're chunking away at that list?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions on?
No, not right now, I guess.
Once again, this is a proposed budget, and we do need to have a balanced general fund budget for the September 30th. And that's what the levy will be, is for the general fund.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to be setting another budget meeting, correct? Thank you. And that'll be usually committee, part of the committee of the whole meeting, or should we do it separately? We should do it separately, would you say?
Counselor Beyondich made a motion to do a separate meeting, so
Right,
that will be a
that's what I
separate meeting.
thought. I was just trying to refresh my old-time memory. All right, thank you. All right, very good. Thank you. Counselor Johnson?
One thing I wanted to point out that we didn't talk about is with the wastewater treatment plant and hiring of people services. That's who does it, right? I was lucky enough to meet with the regional director and just asked for a tour. He had no idea why I was asking for a tour, but to see what we were getting for our, it seems like a big amount. But I need to let the council know that we are absolutely getting the biggest bang for our dollar based on the company that we have hired. For example, a while back, one of the pump rooms flooded, and had that been an internal city operation with our own employees, we'd probably still not be up and running, but through the cooperation of the fire department, Public Works, and their network of employees, they're slowly working on fixing it. And that's the benefit of hiring this company, is on a moment's notice, they can call people from 3 states away with the expertise to fix this very specific stuff. If you ever have an opportunity to go through it, it was an amazing opportunity to learn from where it went into the building next to the street to where it went out into the creek. It was amazing. So I think that money is very well spent, and we pay them like we do with most of our contracts for basic service. And then when there's an emergency or when there's extra work needed, that's when we see those extra bills. And it's really the way to do it. If we could get through a year without an emergency, there wouldn't be a whole lot of add-ins. But because of different things that have happened, and a couple of the things were when the building was retrofitted, it was done, and it could have been done differently to make it more convenient for pulling things in and out, which brought me to where Brian is with the doors and the removable walls and all of this, the HVAC being able to come in and out. So just want to assure the council that we really are, I think it's the best thing we could do. We would never be able to hire individuals to work for the city with that type of expertise and specialization that they can call in on an as-needed basis. So I think that's a great budgetary item that we should just leave alone, but wanted everybody to know it truly is an amazing operation to have.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Anything more, Sherry?
We do budget for next year, $295,000 for People Serve.
Okay, so we will be scheduling another budget hearing at a future date, and moving forward, trying to narrow this down to a final budget. So thank you. This is draft number 1. Okay, thank you, everybody. That was some really great discussion. Moving forward, thank you, Sherry, for pointing that out, and for our department head report as well. So we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, Britt.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approve the appointment of a team leader and a floating team leader. With a few retirements that we've had down in Public Works Department, we're short one team leader, and the union has asked that we look at the potential of adding a floating team leader, which is no additional cost, but will allow to have one extra person that would be able to be on call if something were to happen to the other 3 team leaders.
Not only, I think there's a need for that, because we don't have a public works director, it's no additional cost to the city. So looking for council action.
I would move to approve the appointment of a team leader and floating team leader.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Friedlieb to approve. Is there support? Is there support?
I'll support, Mayor.
Support by Councilor Bearable. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item comes to you from the Personnel Committee from August 13th regarding a memorandum of understanding regarding the event program manager position and the wage.
Thank you. We did have a Personnel Committee meeting. It included myself, Councilor Paulson, and Councilor Friedlieb, and we discussed the program manager position, event coordinator position. They looked at the salary, looked on, we're on candidate number 3, and candidate number 3 apparently has now is going to move on with the hiring process, but there was a motion, and I think I would like to allude to Councilor Paulson and the Councilor Friedlieb for some additional information regarding our meeting. Councilor Paulson or Councilor Friedlieb? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So when I walked into the meeting, I really didn't have any intention of increasing this salary, mainly because when we originally discussed this, we put the job description together, the council did, and then it goes back to MAPE, which is the union body, to set the wage, and this was the recommendation that came from MAPE originally. So basically, I walked into the meeting not really wanting to increase that. However, in looking at the duties, the overtime that will probably happen, although this is a salaried position, they would not be paid any overtime. And then looking at their, I guess it wouldn't be counterpart, but within the AFSCME union and what an AFSCME union employee makes, plus their overtime, that AFSCME union with overtime would actually make more money than the MAPE position that we are hiring. So in order to reflect that and take into consideration that this is a salaried position that will require many more hours and that will not be qualified for overtime, we as a group decided that that increase, it was approximately 5,500 or 5,000 straight, I think. 5,000 straight across the board from the original recommendation of MAPE. The MAPE rep was there and agreed with this recommendation and this motion going forward, and that's why we're here today presenting that as the committee.
And Thank you, Counselor Paulson. It was an increase from 65,600 to 70,600. Counselor Freely, any other questions, any comments, any additional information you'd like to share?
That was well summarized, but just the one positive benefit to all of this is that we had some really high-quality candidates. And even though the top two sought to go elsewhere, that still left us with additional high-quality candidates with the experience that we're looking for. And so I guess I'm crossing my fingers that we will garner the services of that person soon, and hopefully this adjustment will be beneficial to he and his family and help him make the decision to join our team in Virginia and be a part of what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you.
And thank you, Counselor Freely. So the committee is bringing forth to the committee of the whole a recommendation that we approve this increase, annual increase of from $65,600 to $70,600, and looking for some additional comments, questions. Counselor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. The memorandum in front of us is 75.
70,500.
So is that the accurate number?
Yes.
Okay, so it's only a $4,900. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that it's a $4,900 change, not a.
Very good,
so-
thank you.
And I would move the memorandum with that being noted.
Okay, Counselor Johnson moves to approve the memorandum of understanding. Is there support? Support by Counselor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Beyondich.
You. Did the previous two candidates take other jobs?
Yes.
Okay, so when we do this in the future, when we're halfway through a process, I look at myself, if I were to go for a job and I declined it, and then I find out they hired for a higher wage, how do we prevent this in the future? And also, knowing that this wage is going up, how does it affect people above that scale? Do they also get bumped up?
This is a part of what we looked at also. This is the very lowest paid person in MAPE, and it was a $12,000 difference between this person and the next person before this 5,000 was added. So it was a very large difference between the two. The other people, the other candidates that we had, wasn't the wage. The wage was a side comment that it was low. It was not the reason why they didn't take the job. There were other indicators why they didn't take it.
It just was concerning that halfway through this process, we raised the wage.
And this is the one position that we don't know what we don't know, because this is a new position for all of us. I mean, we know public works directors and we know park and rec directors, and we know this position is completely new for everybody. So I think this is probably a one-time thing that will probably never happen again.
And Counselor Beyondich, we did vet out that very same question that you asked, because we had the same concerns as you. So thank you. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 12A is a resolution to hire patrol officers. This is simply in your packet for a placeholder. They are conducting interviews as we speak, and they expect that at the council meeting next Tuesday, they will have applicant names to bring forward, barring that nothing goes wrong with the interviews today. But they do expect that they'll have at least 2 candidates to bring forward for the potential 3 openings that we have. And we have two openings right now. A third one is coming. We just don't know the date when.
And I think we have some significant challenges with respect to the patrol officer position, with the pool being exhausted for the most part, and opportunities these positions we are competing with other departments to fill these positions. And there's been other departments that have extended their hiring dates and their signing bonuses and all kinds of things moving forward. So we're hoping that the candidates that want to come to Virginia are vetted out like we always do in our professional staff. So you're asking us to review, or you want a resolution to approve?
For 12A, we don't have a name yet, so we can that's just, like I said, a placeholder that realized on the 24th, we're coming forward with a resolution with some names in it.
Thank you, Britt. And that's for all 3?
Nope, for 12B, we do have a name. The firefighter paramedic, we do want to approve awarding that position to Sanjay Lanta, who is a extremely qualified dual role firefighter paramedic, of course, contingent upon background check and pre-employment physical.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson to approve. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
And then item 12C is we just recently approved rehiring dual role firefighter EMTs. And after interviews, we are coming forward with Justin Bachman as the candidate we would like to bring forward as our next hire as a dual role firefighter EMT.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, opposed, motion carries. So do we want to keep forging through these last items, or do we want to take a quick break? Let's go. Okay.
Thank you. Item number 13 is we had already approved the agreement between the state of Minnesota, 6th Judicial District for the Memorandum of Understanding for North St. Louis County Mental Health Court and the Hybrid Treatment Court. But as soon as we sent it back to the state said, oh, we need to make a change and sent it back to us again for resignature. So we need approval one more time to approve these agreements.
Move to that we sign the amended agreements.
Moved by Counselor Johnson to approve the modified agreement. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Counselor Bearable. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, opposed, motion carries.
Number 14 is again a discussion item it'll be on the 24th council agenda. We put the resolution calling for the public hearing on the proposed adoption of a development program for the proposed municipal development district number 6 and proposed establishment of tax increment financing district number 6-1. This is for the potential hotel project.
And we're calling for the public hearing, and the date is October 12th. Okay, looking for
Strictly here today for discussion.
so this is just for discussion.
Correct.
Reviewing the public hearing, no action. Reviewing the resolution, right?
Reviewing the resolution that'll be on the 24th council.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anybody have any questions about the forthcoming resolution that will be brought forth on the 24th? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you. I'm just reading it quickly again. It talks about the TIF district. Is there, I'm sorry, I had to reread it again. Is there language in there that states why we are asking for it to be designated a TIF? Or do we have the obligation to state that or not for a hotel development? So when the community reads that public hearing, they will know what it's about and if they want to attend to address that at that time? Or is this just specific to the TIF designation?
My apologies, I'm having seasonal allergies, so, so bear with me if I start sneezing again. This is just calling a resolution to put together a TIF, have a public hearing to develop a TIF district. There's numerous things that need to be done moving up until that date of October 12th. We need an updated pro forma from the developer. We also need to work with the county assessor on the minimum assessment agreement for the valuation of the building. And then we have to meet with Tammy Amdahl from Northland Securities to kind of do a TIF run and abatement run and compare them side by side and give you more information. I have some of that right now, but I don't have enough yet. In fact, later today, I have a call with Aperva to go over some of this stuff. So we have more to do, Councilor Paulson, and we're working on it. And this is just getting us set up so we can do that.
And so that kind of goes to my next, I guess, thought process here is that, does this fall into alignment with Aperva's timetable that he gave us yesterday?
We admittedly are a little bit behind.
Okay.
We would rather be, but this is the
Further
best
ahead.
we can do to meet state requirement laws for business subsidy and
Okay.
posting and advertising.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
And then I think to Councilor Paulson's point, the developer was looking primarily for what we approved the other day, the project, or the project labor, the project labor agreement, excuse me, the project labor agreement. They needed that to slot in Rise Modular. So that was the important one, so thank you. Okay, we need to take action on that? No, thank you. Next item.
The next item is a request to approve entering into an agreement with the Virginia Community Foundation for submission for the Minnesota Deed Downtown Revitalization Grant Program. And I'm going to again defer to John as long as he can not sneeze.
Thank you, John.
Well, that's a lot of pressure. I don't know if I can follow that up there, City Administrator Britt. I'll do the best I can. Let me back up. So the state of Minnesota through is accepted a bunch of money from the federal government, and the state legislator gave it to the state deed to appropriate to cities through a competitive grant program due to COVID, the civil unrest, all that kind of stuff. So this is, but the really interesting part of what the legislature did is they said cities and counties, everything, you can't apply for this money, which none of us to this day really understand, but that's what they did. There's a 65% of all these, there's $80 million total. There's two $40 million rounds, and the first one is due already August 31st. They came out with the RFP August 4th, and it's due on the 31st. So we've been working really hard on this right now for a number of economic development projects throughout the city. But the city cannot be the applicant. The EDA can't be the applicant. It has to go to a nonprofit. So what we've been doing is working closely with the Virginia Community Foundation because we felt they are a nonprofit, they are an eligible partner organization, they have the staff, they have the legal capacity to do it, and the city wants to work with Betsy Olivani at the Small Business Development Center and us help them write the application, process all the stuff, and just have them be the fiscal agent for us. The Virginia Community Foundation, in turn, wanted an agreement with the city, kind of outlining, okay, you know, who's responsible for what, who has to do what things, what's insurance, all those kind of things. So that's what's in front of you. And we have to move quickly because, again, our application is due on the 31st. If you'd like me to get into details about what will be in the application and the funding request, I can get into that in a minute. But right now, we're just looking at the agreement between us and the Virginia Community Foundation.
And I think it's important for us to move forward with this. When you provide some additional details in discussions at the state level, there's reasons why they came out October 4th and it's due on August 4th and it's due on August 31st. It's because there are other entities that already have had previous discussions and have set, they're ready to go. So they got a little inside information for the lack of a better term. So we're trying to forge your way through that. So looking for a motion to approve and enter into agreement with the City of Virginia Community Foundation for the submission of the Downtown Revitalization Grant Program, and then John will provide us some specific details with respect to that.
I will move the fiscal sponsor agreement as proposed.
Councilor Johnson moves to approve. Is there support?
I'll support, Mayor.
Thank you. Supported by Councilor Bearable. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain. I need to abstain.
Okay. All in favor say aye, and one's abstention. Any nays?
I also need to abstain.
Okay. Motion passes 5-2 with 2 abstentions. Correct? Thank you.
Thank you, John. Item number 16 is approve the resolution authorizing the City of Virginia to make application for an Iron Range Resources Commercial Redevelopment Grant for demolition of the building at 224 Chestnut Street.
Is that Rant Mansell's range
That
music?
is Rant Monso's Range Music.
Okay, thank you.
Also move, Mayor.
Moved by Councilor Bearable. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And then the final item before we go to the final item, there is an application on your desk for a transient merchant license.
Okay, thank you. You have before you a handout that came today regarding Melissa Sundval doing business as Whole Catering, looking for a catering license. Proposed date of sale is to be determined August 19th at Alcott Park and so on. So it's for a
Move to
food
approve.
license. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
I'll move to approve, Mayor.
Counselor Paulson moves to approve the transit merchant license for Wall Catering. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Freely?
Mayor, this would just be the potential for another item of concern prior to going to closed session.
Okay, so we're moved in supportive of this document for the transit merchant license. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Counselor Freely?
There was some pertinent discussion earlier with regard to the equipment that we were purchasing from the Miners Memorial Building that kind of went on a tangent with regard to the scheduling that is kind of first to be heard from many of you here on the council. I am the liaison from the to the school board from the city council and have been ongoingly with communications to representatives at the school board. Not specific to this particular issue because to my knowledge it wasn't a public issue, to be honest with you. I think that these were decisions made at an administrative level that had nothing to do with public conversation. Just quick history is that the final season of the Blue Devil hockey team was supposed to take place this upcoming winter.
Correct.
And they had a schedule for the varsity team to play exclusively at the brand-new Iron Rain Motors Event Center. During the course of the next several months, some decisions were made based on the resignation of the head high school coach in Eveleth and the non-renewal of the coach in Virginia that they were going to be starting something new with the hiring of a new coach, and so it was time maybe to consolidate the programs into one team, which was the Rock Ridge Wolverines hockey program. And so that has taken place, and then even during the whole, referendum for the school, the Isaac Sports Group provided information during the whole public informational with regard to what the school district would be accomplishing in this $186 some odd million project, that it was anticipated and expected that the brand-new Wolverines hockey team, varsity hockey team, would in fact play at the brand-new arena exclusively when it opened. But they decided, the school district or administrators decided that for whatever reason, they felt it was necessary to think in different terms. And so tentatively, like you heard earlier, it sounds as though they've now eliminated that full-time scheduling at our arena and is now planning on splitting it between two arenas. And when I first heard that, I took some opposition to that as a yes voter in the community of Virginia, as I hope many of us were, and we came out in public support of this, just individually as well as an elected body. I mean, they needed property that the city of Virginia had availed, and we gave them a significant deal on that property. I think it was estimated at value at, somewhere near $1 million, and we decided we're all in on this whole concept of consolidation for the school district. We should partner with them in a sense by providing them this land for a nominal fee of $50,000. Again, with I think some expectation and anticipation that they would continue to be a partner with us with regard to the state-of-the-art facilities that they were going to be building and providing for all families and students and programs in the area. And so I am particularly concerned with the fact that the school district has moved away from that notion. Granted, and I'll be admitting, we had nothing in writing. It was all informal. It was just an expectation and anticipation that is not necessarily now coming to fruition, which could potentially harm revenue projections for our facility that we had in place for the future to some degree, and other ramifications that we're really unaware of at this point in time that could be harmful to our project and our endeavor that, in my estimation, personally, I felt we were a partner with the school district with regard to the facilities, state-of-the-art facilities that we were providing for the communities. Now, I would never, in my right mind, ever diss anything with regard to the value and the history and the actual cultural significance of the Hippodrome. When you talk in terms of like iconic hockey arenas and iconic hockey venues, that's it in the state of Minnesota. There's no question about that. But it's a 100-year-old facility as of 2021, and it's still functional and capable of being utilized in many regards, but no way did we anticipate, or did I think most of the voting yes public anticipate, that it would be to the detriment of our contribution to the school's endeavors. And so I'm quite concerned about that. And I think if I was living in Eveleth and was a community member in Eveleth, I would literally want that Hippodrome kept as a museum for the iconic value that it has in the area for Minnesota hockey as well as hockey in the United States of America, and potentially have a annual commemorative game played at the Hippodrome, or additional tourneys that could be played at the Hippodrome, and multiple programs could be utilizing the Hippodrome for years to come as well, but not necessarily varsity hockey, given that it's the biggest revenue-generating program that would be coming to an event center like we just built. And again, we had an anticipation and an expectation that that was going to happen. So I don't know where we're at with this. I know informally there was an approach made by the school district to Brian Silber to enter into contracts for ice time at the arenas. It sounds like it's already a foregone conclusion. They've redone the schedule, it sounds like, and that's in its final moments. And as you recall, Iron Trail Motors has indicated in kind of a memorandum of understanding or an addendum that by October of 2022, they had an anticipation too that the money they were putting into this was going to be partly to have that housed in that venue, that hockey team would be in that venue. And so basically, I guess I'm looking at, I would suggest that if they come to the city seeking time for the utilization of our facility to continue to have the flip-flopping between the two facilities, I would not be favorable to that. I guess I would be to the point of maybe this upcoming season, because like I said, I think it's already after the fact with regard to how they've scheduled accordingly. But it should be 1 year at a time, in my estimation, with the anticipation or the pressure, the push to encourage the school district to then use our facility exclusively for the varsity hockey team come the following school year, 22-23. So it's a significant issue to some. I don't know if any of you watched the school board meeting on cable access the other day. After watching that,
I did.
I had to, and having been involved in that business for many years, I realized right then and there that the school board and the superintendent and the administration of Rock Ridge has many, many, many more pressing priorities on their agenda than where people are going to play hockey or practice hockey. So that's why I didn't feel it was timely for me to approach anybody with any discussion further with regard to where we as an elected body in the city of Virginia should be sitting with regard to that particular issue. But it is an issue that's going to affect us at some point down the road, and I think we need to advocate on behalf of our facility, but in no way does that mean that we are dissing what they're thinking in terms of utilizing in the other city, because it is an iconic place that should be maintained in some capacity. So with that, I just wanted to put that out there, given the fact that I don't know that everybody's been informed to this level of what's happening. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to take that one step further. I agree with everything you said, Councilor Freelieb. And I know that there's an issue with respect to whether there's going to be a 3-year contract or 1-year contract. And I'm anticipating that our Park and Rec Director was going to come forward with whatever recommendation, whatever the school board is proffering with respect to the 3-year program. But I just want to, I'm going to say it right here. I do believe that this is not, this Iron Range Toyota Iron Trail Motors Arena, is that correct? Man, Iron Range Total Event Center. I'll get it. I apologize. The Iron Trail Motors Event Center. This is not the home of the Rock Ridge Wolverines. You can argue the fact that, well, they play half the games here, half the game. It's not the home of the Rock Ridge Wolverines yet, like you said. It may be coming in the future, but I would go a step further, saying if there's going to be any advertising or anything with respect to Rock Ridge, it's not going to be the home of the Rock Ridge Wolverines until the school board makes that decision. That's their decision to make. We're affected by it, I think, adversely, but that's up to the school board to decide, and I wish they would come to us with respect to that and keep us a little bit more informed of what's going on. Thank you. Anybody else? Bueller? Anyone? Okay, thank you. Okay, next item.
Thank you. The next item is a request for purchase of city-owned property, and it may be closed for real estate negotiations as per Minnesota Statute 13D.05 Subdivision 3. And this is regarding the vacant lots at 220 and 228 Chestnut Street.
Okay, I have a motion to close the meeting for real estate negotiations pursuant to the Minnesota statute.
I'll move.
Moved by Counselor Paulson. Is there support?
Full support.
Support by Counselor Baraboo. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Meeting is now closed. Thank you.